it's a kind of a lot of work. There's a lot of
Yeah, I
like,
always find that once I've got it like done, then you've got to like, okay, I need to do a bit of artwork for that bit. Then I need to do like description. Then I need to choose which tags so it actually gets noticed.
yeah,
So you're always fighting against the AI.
yep.
Like, doesn't want to recognize. Obviously, you're probably more aware of that than I am. I'm aware of it, but I don't really pay
I
too much mind.
I'm clearly not great at it because like my algorithm, I can see the numbers of like how many people are watching one. You can too.
Yeah, of
You're
course.
using we're on the same platforms, and I'm like looking at the numbers just steadily decline. So I'm like, clearly, like whatever I used to be doing, they changed something on me because it's not working over here. Like the show, we do, my show is random, but like that's kind of like the appeal of it. And so I'm like, I don't think like the format's changed enough to cause this great sort of exodus of viewership. It's just people aren't finding it anymore. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's
Clearly,
definitely something to do with feeds, I think.
what's that?
And it's also maybe I always think maybe it's something to do with actual numbers. Once it gets into like high numbers, maybe people don't want to just jump in.
Yeah.
So, because I always think that about like,
Maybe.
let's say you're watching a series, and it's episode 699. It's like, oh, right. So I've got 600 episodes to catch up on, which is why I always think like television, whatnot, goes to seasons. So it's like
Yeah.
season, and then it doesn't seem so bad. Oh, it's season 2, episode 3. I've just got 2 episodes I can catch up on. If I really like it, I can go back and see season 1. So I always think, oh, maybe it's worth doing something like that.
That's interesting.
Maybe it's just a thought I had.
No,
Anyway.
no, 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 no. That's actually fascinating because so my podcast, as it gets exported to like Spotify, iTunes, and all that stuff, that is seasons. So that's
Mm-hmm.
written as like so right now this is season 3. I got to do math to figure out which episode of season 3 this would technically be. So this is season 3 right now. We're early on. I think we're like probably eight or 9 episodes into season 3, and on the podcast apps like Spotify and stuff, I actually list it like that. It's everywhere
Mm-hmm.
else. It's 115. That's interesting because the actual like pure audio format has maintained its numbers like more steadily than anything else. Like it's just like the audience who listens to me on like just Spotify or just iTunes, like they really listen. And so hey, if you're listening back to this on Spotify or whatever, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. That engagement, that constant, they are the wall, like they are the bulwark of my audience. So the silent majority of chat gang, as it were.
Well, I find the same thing actually. Yeah, the audio version is just like the numbers just steadily creep up little by little.
Yeah.
Whereas like on the YouTube version, it kind of goes. Some episodes get a lot of hits,
Yeah.
some don't get that many hits, some get a lot, and then next one doesn't get that many. It's like,
Oh yeah. It's like a heartbeat, like just yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously the episodes that have like someone like a Vince Venturella on or
it's
hey, well, like
sort of a name, sort of an audience bringer, so to speak.
right,
Yeah,
yeah, those go up there. But I never wanted my show to be exclusively like about just like parading through all the famous people. I feel like that's a little bit like clout chasing. I don't particularly care for one, and for two, like
a bit
I'm
like
all yeah. Go
the
ahead.
dragon sort.
What was that?
A bit like chasing the dragon sort of thing.
Sure.
Or
Yeah.
like army builds, like just going for the popular lists, just doing that. See,
Right.
changing all the time.
And this
It's
show's
a bit
always been about the
soulless, maybe.
adjacencies. Like
Mm.
yeah. No, I mean no shade on anyone who does does that. But I mean speaking of that, we've kind of been talking around content. We might as well do the introduction and then we can kind of talk about what you're more particularly the kind of content you've been making. I am of course the magical Mr. Mephisto, the most dangerous man in Age of Sigmar. Welcome to AOS RantCast 115. Speaking of big numbers, that's a big one. I'm talking with Damian from JUGS, which is Japan's United Game Society or Gaming Society. Sorry. How's it going?
Very well, thank you. It's a nice,
Awesome.
bright, sunny morning here in Japan.
Yeah, I'm.
We've just most in Japan, like Christmas is not a thing. It is a thing, but it's not a thing. So the holiday season began basically yesterday.
Okay. So I guess what holiday season are so it began yesterday for you. What is the season like? What is there some like
This is a
Shinto
shogatsu,
or okay? What is it?
which basically just means New Year.
Uh So
And it's more of a Shinto thing, really, to be honest. Because as soon as you get to like Gantan, which is like the first day of the year, everyone goes to the shrines and like does they pray for good things to come in the year. Obviously, next year is the year of the tiger, so it's all tiger iconography everywhere.
Huh. Huh.
So, so
Does it feel as like totally overtaken by like commercialization in Japan, or is it like pretty chill? Like what? I guess what's the vibe? Like educate
the
me.
weird thing, the weird thing is, like the West does with Christmas, Japan's done with Christmas, but it's like they have Christmas. It's not a holiday or anything. This is the first Christmas I've not worked actually, because it was on a Saturday,
Yeah.
purely because of that.
Yeah.
And so like as soon as it gets to beginning of November, it's like a big. There's those Christmas decorations everywhere, and it's like Christmas, 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 Christmas. Like sell toys, sell toys, sell toys, and
Okay.
sell what,
So
and sell, and it's so sell, buy, kind of feeling. Decorations everywhere. Gets to the 24th midnight, everything disappears.
amazing.
On the 25th, and then from the 25th onwards, it's like New Year, New Year, New Year, New Year, New Year, New Year, New Year. But it's not the same kind of commercial, like capitalism on hyperdrive
Yeah.
feeling about it. It's a bit more traditional. It's like get home, relax, take your
Yeah,
time,
that's
watch.
interesting.
So it's that kind of feeling. Um, Obviously, back home, it's quite normal on Christmas Day if you're not working to like just stay at home.
Yeah.
Family come over, friends come over, whatever, have a few drinks, open your presents. That's what New Year's Day is like here. So New Year's Eve is not such a big thing, but New Year's Day is like it's basically like Christmas. It feels like that. It's family time,
Uh-huh.
flow time, sort of thing. Yeah.
That's actually awesome. Like I've said, I've observed a few times, borrowed observation. Really, a lot of people have said it, but America's like greatest exports is the American culture. Like it's just, and America and Japan have like a very interesting relationship on account of that whole big World War thing and the post
Yeah, yeah.
occupation. Yeah, like post occupation Japan, where like a lot of American. Soldiers living in Japan and sort of like I did one of my papers I did in college was actually on which I guess would be university for you, right? Like of the UK.
Yes,
You know,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, okay. Yeah. So one of the papers I actually did was on like as a dirty English lit major was actually on like sort of the evolution of manga and trying to convince all my like stuffy English lit majors that like genre fiction and manga and comics and all that stuff are literature as well. And I was talking about like some of the stuff I discovered from there was essentially this sort of like this sort of symbiosis. So first off, you had like the Japanese or sort of Japanese interest in German film was very popular around that time period. But then like these
Mm-hmm.
American soldiers in the sort of occupation era of Japan would have the, like literal Superman comics, and like you'd have these sort of riffs on that like Superman, Superman comics and stuff like that, and then you sort of the influence from the German filmography, which was really like where if Superman punches someone in a Superman comic, like you see the punch, like the punch has happened, it is done. And one of the big distinguishers for manga was showing like all the way through the actions, having individual cells or individual, and that was that German inspiration. And like honestly, like as sort of an inception point, like that happened, and it like kind of kept going like this sort of back and forth. And of course like manga would come out, and then like American artists or like Japanese soldiers would bring some manga back home, American artists would read it, and then we'd start to get like a lot more like sort of Japan in our
Explanations.
comics. Yeah, there's the real cross pollination that happened in like sort of American culturalism, and they've kind of always been little inextricably linked. Like you had the
Mm-hmm.
cool Japan era, which was their term for it, like the big cool Japan capital letters, was where Japan was essentially exporting its culture to the world aggressively. We get stuff, like that's when you start seeing everything ninja, everything robots, like just selling
Yeah.
crap to your kids. And Pokemon is still the Pokemon Empire is still going strong. It's off that's the same wave of cool Japan. So
Mm.
it's a really fascinating sort of like the world's a lot more connected than I think people maybe initially realize, even prior to the internet, age. Like people want to like hang out. People want to be social. They want to share stuff with each other, and
Mm-hmm.
especially your passion. I think that's really what RantCast's all about, and I think that's what we're going to talk about here. So Warhammer in Japan,
Yes,
right?
yes. Uh, it's gone through a few difficult phases. Warhammer. Oh, like when I first came here in 2003. That was just for a couple of years. Lived in this most southern island of Japan, Kyushu. It's very hot, very tropical in places, very damp. I was there for a couple of years, but I wasn't really back into the hobby at the time.
Mhm.
So then I went back to go back home for a bit, then came back here in 2007, and quickly fell into sort of wanting to paint models and stuff. Obviously, there's a lot of plastic models here, like obviously Gundam and whatnot, and
Yeah, yeah,
all the entire vast Bandai kind of output of all sorts of things and stuff.
yeah.
Which, like, I was aware of. I used to read a lot of manga when I was young. I used to watch a lot of anime when I was young, but it wasn't really something that drew me. What I used to do when I was a kid was Warhammer with
Oh.
my father and brother, and so I sort of got back here and then realized that they had a couple. There's a few like Warhammer shops around, like GW shops.
Yeah, yeah.
There's one in Chiba City. The prefecture I'm in is Chiba. JUGS is in Chiba. So that's Tokyo's kind of there. Chiba's just down below it. That's the prefecture there. Tokyo's its own thing, obviously.
Yeah.
Uh, and so slowly just kind of found out that there were a few GW shops and would just kind of go there. They're always very, very, very quiet, very deserted though. Anyway, this is back in 2008, so we're still in old War Fantasy.
Yeah.
It's 8th edition, 7th, 8th edition, end of 7th, start of 8th. And 8th, like everywhere, I think there was a steady decline in sales more than anything else. Not interest per se, but sales until like the end times.
Yeah, I mean that wasn't just in Japan. That was
It was everywhere.
everywhere. Like Games Workshop with the Warhammer Fantasy Battle IP was just it was just I mean a steady decline is basically a description of it from the 2000 the 2000s through basically the end times, right? Like it just I don't know. I have my own hypotheses on it. Just sort of like really having no place to go, not really growing well. The fandom really, you know, 3D printing. Some people are like, oh, 3D printing killed Warhammer Fantasy Battle. And I don't think it's that because 3D printing would, if 3D printing killed Warhammer Fantasy Battle, then we should see a correlation with Warhammer 40k dying. And Warhammer 40k sales have trended upward virtually forever. Like it's the opposite land. So you could think maybe Games Workshop diverting interest into 40k is why part of the. And honestly, I think like a lot of things, there's probably a combination of chicken or the egg, where Games Workshop probably wasn't. They're not. It's not their main cash cow. They're not really driving into it the way they are with 40k. And they're just kind of puzzled why people aren't buying it anymore. And there's a little bit of a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy there too. But also, honestly, like I don't think your fan base can stay super excited about something that has nowhere else to go. Like it's for me the Warhammer Fantasy. Like I have great memories of Warhammer Fantasy Battle, but it feels very stuffy and like it's kind of like it already sort of the story's all like mostly fully told and the world's all filled in, and I think that hurt it in some way. And then just from like an outsider looking in, I was playing 40k around that time, and like the absolute disdain the fandom itself seemed to have for Warhammer Fantasy Battle. And a lot of people look at it with rose-tinted goggles now, but looking at like exact web forums that told you not to buy Games Workshop models, and here's all the proxies out there from all the other companies to buy it, and you're an idiot if you buy Games Workshop Fantasy Battle models. And I'm like, again, like opposite day, like I'm in the 40k community, 40k side of things at that point. I'm just looking over at the Warhammer Fantasy Battle community, going like, wow, guys, like really, like not that like 40k has ever truly been a wholesome community. I've been on Bolter and Chainsword, man. But like that disdain for the product itself, like the product line itself, just kind of wasn't there. Like people are punch drunk idiots in love with their space marines. Like they're just, clearly, But with 40k, with Warhammer Fantasy Battle, it wasn't the same vibe. I think AOS, on the other hand, it's clear that Games Workshop is supporting it very, very well. It's clear that the passion's there. It's clear that the interest is there. It's clear that they're driving it. I mean, its sales have, percentage-wise, increased over 40Ks every year since it's been out. Like, it's clearly the thing growing the fastest. And capitalism cares an awful lot about growth, not even necessarily about raw numbers. So in their company capitalism-addled mind, they look at the growth and they go, "This is a winner," just because those
Yeah,
growth
as long
numbers.
as it's timing is the good way.
Yep.
Yeah, back then for here in Japan, it was slightly different than other places in the world. Now, then the communities in Japan are, at that time and now, but less so, is very much Tokyo based
Mm-hmm.
because that's where all the numbers are. That's where most of the clubs are. It's also where a lot of expats live or come to, and they've kind of brought their own passion, same as me, brought their own passion for like Warhammer with them, or
Mm-hmm.
40k as well, and everything. So they're the guys who would go into the shops. They'd be the guys who would get Japanese people who they know, friends or what, into it, interested in it.
Mm-hmm.
And that certainly happened with JUGS, our club. The reason it's JUGS Japan's United is because we had lots of Japanese players come in. So we wanted to create something that was like
Mm-hmm.
Westerners being able to meet with Japanese native speakers and sort of share our passions.
That's
Which
amazing.
is why United Gaming. So that was the underlying principle, as well as the play on words, obviously with JUGS. Just thought it was funny. I didn't come up with that name.
um,
Anyhow, that's a by the by. So during that period, we had a lot of members from different countries because we had lots of people coming in from universities around the world,
mm-hmm.
students who wanted to play. Some of them even brought their models with them and stuff. Others like borrowed armies or used armies then. So that was all going on. So it was quite a healthy environment for 40k in our little club and for fantasy as well. And at the time, GW had actually they're releasing all of the army books for free in Japanese translations. So you
Okay.
could just download them for free. So you could just, and that got a lot of Japanese interest in.
It's crazy if you give people like free stuff like near that barrier of entry, they'll get into your thing. It's like almost like they should do that. That's really crazy.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously when AOS started in as well, free
Yeah,
rules.
all the war scrolls. We
And
get the
it's
war
like
scrolls for free.
all,
You know,
all
yeah,
the
yeah.
war scrolls, all the old clunky rules back then and stuff. But for generating interest, obviously Privateer Press did a lot of that, more so back in the day than now. And so anyway, that generates a lot of interest. But anyway,
Yeah,
halfway through
drug
the
dealers
end
do it
time,
too. The first hit is free, right? Like it's just.
oh, yeah, it's the way to go.
Yeah, here's your first hit of plastic crack. There you go. Like yeah, yeah.
Now so you sold to us.
um,
So partway through the end times, they just cut all that off, I think, and they've stopped all that. And so loads of Japanese players are just like, oh right, this is not going anywhere, and just like the bottom just fell out of it from that point of view. Obviously, they're going to kill the world anyway, and so that caused a lot of kind of funny feelings across the community. And so we also saw them closing GW shops down here and there, ones that weren't doing very well, obviously. And so it just shrunk to about a couple of shops in Tokyo, and then nothing else. And all the native people, just like native Japanese players, mostly like, let's go elsewhere. And so you saw them all sort of head off, which kind of really, really fractured our little group. And it also had a similar effect on many, many other little groups. So you either had...
go ahead. No, go on. Finish your thought.
So, that was a real kicker. And then AOS came out a couple of months later after the last book, Archeon. And from that, I think they really wanted a new start. That started out in these few GW shops they had in Tokyo. And from there, because it was successful, and 40k was very successful at the time, the company seemed to change their way of doing this. Basically, they consolidated everything to a couple of shops that were doing well, and then kind of rebranded everything. And then they've slowly grown since then, and it's grown and grown and grown.
Well, that's around the time of the new CEO as well, as I recall, like the
exactly
round tree or round bottom or whatever. Yeah,
that's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Obviously, because the thinking before that was very different before now. So that sort of strategy went hand in hand, and it's worked very well here.
Interesting.
Although the community is still small, but you can really see it here. In other I think in other countries it was less obvious because there was more of an ongoing community that went on. But it was kind of a small community to start with that got slapped about the face. shaken about. A few people clung on, but then they rebuilt a new body around that skeleton.
Yeah. Yeah,
It
I'm
seemed to
all
be
for
seemed
like
to be.
resurrecting skeletons. Let me tell you.
It's so good. So
um, so real quick here, Takeover Mars, Hotspur showing up, dropping 1,000 RDP to remind everyone, chat gang ain't nothing to mess with. Hey, how's it going, Vampirus? How's it going, Manzak? Manzak saying quite interesting about holiday celebration in Japan. Yeah, yeah, no, I like this is peak RantCast for me is like we're talking about Warhammer, but we're also getting a little culture lesson here. This is it's the adjacencies of gaming that unite us and bring us together. That's the shit that I'm really interested in. So I'm just kind of like putting together a rough timeline. JUGS has been together since like 2008, like your gaming club.
I think we kind of unofficially got together, a few of us, about 2008, 2009,
Okay.
and then we kind of came up with a name and stuff a little later than that, 2010 maybe, 2010, yeah.
So your club's been around about like a decade now. Like I mean, a little over a decade.
Oh yeah. Thinking about it, yes.
Yeah, time flies, huh? You're like, crap, we have been doing this for like 10 years.
10 years. Over 10 years, that's bizarre, yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean that's cool. So I guess from the sort of American perspective, we talk a lot about ourselves, obviously. And then it's pretty much UK, Australia are kind of like the three dominant scenes we really tend to like talk and think about. Now, I happen to know a lot of like really awesome like sort of German players in Warhammer, so like when I'm talking to like some German some I think one of my friends in Denmark and then there's some Scandinavian folks thrown in there.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to like look at like sort of Euro from that from getting information from them when I talk to them, and I feel like the sort of like wait, Japan plays Warhammer maybe catches some people as by surprise a little bit, and to just show that this isn't just like a couple of the big regions. It's actually like it really is global. It's starting to percolate out there into other countries and stuff. I think that's really cool. How many people are in your club at this point?
At the moment, it's hard to say because people come in and out. So active players, there's only about a dozen of us active playing, I think, at the moment.
That's a
We've had people who've like come over and then they've been here at university, then they've gone back home, but they still stay in contact and like send us pictures of models and stuff, or So it's been a revolving door. I think obviously COVID hit us quite hard, hit everywhere quite hard.
Yeah.
Because obviously Japan's been very good about why the numbers have been as they are, I suppose. Like wearing masks, disinfecting all the time. Even though we've never had a hard lockdown.
Yeah.
It was only during the Olympics that the numbers went pretty crazy. But then after that, the government just kind of goes, well, everyone, just be careful now, wear your masks, get vaccinated. Obviously, vaccination rates here are very high compared to other countries, finally. So, I think we're up to 78% of the population, adult population.
Yeah, my buddy, talking to my buddy Chris, like he's he as I mentioned he lives in Japan, kind of in the off part. Talking to him, like his experience of COVID-19 has been like a lot different. Like he did talk about like there's like a week or two in there where there was like he felt like Japan was really going backwards, and maybe that was around the Olympics, and just wasn't
the numbers went really through then.
Yeah, he felt like I remember him being like really like kind of perplexed, and he's got like a young family and stuff like that. So like I remember him being like really like you've got your new parent stressors, and now you got your global pandemic stressor too. So I remember him like having one of those weeks where he's like, yeah, this guy sucks. It sucks, man. And he's like kind of criticizing the Japanese government, but really most of the time he spends time criticizing the American government still, even though he's I know, Chris, you're a Japanese citizen now, brother. I don't know what to tell you. No. We gotta excommunicate him now. No. No. It's no. No. I mean, yeah. Like you said, COVID-19 has hit kind of everyone like really hard. But like 12 players. I mean, that's a proper club. That's a that's a proper LGS grinder scene. More so than I think any of the Milwaukee had two GW stores and a handful of like non-GW affiliated stores that were gaming centric, were wargaming centric, and I think they peaked at like 6 to 8 players per. So, you're seeing a lot of the usual suspects with those numbers. So, But that's cool. So I guess tournament scenes is that you were talking about an end of the year tournament actually last time we were talking on Twitch.
Well,
So
yeah, we're just gonna have a great game tomorrow. That's it. Just a couple of us though this time. We've had other. We tempted to have one, a little one, at just my place. Because I've got like a biggish house, so I've got a few rooms spare and stuff. So it's just a couple of us tomorrow. But we've had games where like about 6 of us just get together, just do a real like use the rules of like AOS or 40k or something, and then just do a role playing like the old Inquisitor game, sort of like that sort of feeling.
yeah.
Or we did one. There was just a bunch of us that time. It was like 7 or 8 of us who got together and we did like we used the Warcry rules. We linked loads of little narrative games. It just told the story of a group of goblins who like went out hunting for stuff, and then one of them got kidnapped, and then he had to go and rescue it. And so there's 5 or 6 linked games we play over a day, and everyone just played their little group of goblins, but all together versus me as a GM or whatever. So stuff like that, just really kind of really role playing esque, but using the core rules of like games and stuff. That's just a special sort of end of year thing. We've had little mini tournaments in our little club. The biggest, I think, 2 years now we've had like a proper tournament though. Not our club. It was over in Kansai, called the Rising Sun tournament. That's a proper tournament.
Yeah, yeah, I
Usually,
saw
you
yeah,
must have
like
heard of that.
yeah,
That
I
got
just recently heard of that one. Yeah, like
that's
AOS
been
coach was
running for
talking
2
about it a
years
little
now.
bit. Yeah.
Mm-mm-mm. So that's over. I didn't go to that one because it was during COVID. The second one was. The first one was just before that. That's over in Kansai. That was run by a gentleman who's just gone back to Portugal, I think. Now, but he sort of set it up. Champy, his name was. And you can see him. He's quite very active in the AOS community actually still now.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, he kind of set that up in Kansai where he was, which is Osaka and
Yeah.
Kyoto that way. So they had quite a few players. I don't know how many players. It was like must have been 12, 18 or something like that. I'm not quite sure because they didn't go. They did AOS. They also did 40k. I think it was 12 players for each system.
Uh-huh. A 2-dayer,
And
like
yes, I think it was a 2-dayer. Yeah, and then the next year, yeah, they did the same.
Yeah.
And then he went back home, but he left everything in the hands of some of the Japanese players who really got into it. So now it's just become a very Japanese controlled thing. And most Japanese players are bilingual as well. Not all. A lot of our club wasn't, but like me and my friends were bilingual, so it's not a problem. So you got to learn loads of really obscure Japanese words that you don't really use. But anyway, so they've been the 2 clubs, and they've been featured on the Warhammer community website a little bit and referenced. AOS Shorts did an interview with Champy, as I recall. I remember reading that about a year ago.
Yeah.
And so they have a Facebook group as well, and that probably gives a fairly good idea of the number of players, at least on Facebook, in Japan. So that's about 180, 200 players in that group alone, and that's Japanese speakers and English speakers as well.
Yeah.
So the community is probably about that, with maybe about 80% of that player base here in Tokyo, maybe 20% over in Kansai, which on the Shinkansen train, the bullet trains, probably you can get there in 30, 40 minutes, an hour.
Yeah, that's not too bad. Yeah, I mean, I drive like 6 hours for a tournament. Like I'm like unfazed. But a lot of landmass spread out right in America. Something as you're like talking through this, it comes to mind is how we often think about Warhammer. I think when we talk on it, like certainly on podcasting and on Twitter, we tend to talk about tournaments and stuff. And I'm like right now, I'm kind of like going through it, and I'm like, reminded of the fact that like the average Warhammer player isn't like per se a tournament player. Like most people are a lot closer to like kind of what I was like when I was a kid playing Warhammer, where it's just like kind of me and my like 4 friends, and we only ever played at really each other's houses. We didn't really we went to the store a couple times. Like I have to imagine that there's a good chunk of players in Japan or anywhere in the world really, and that's their experience of Warhammer. They don't necessarily like go to like an LGS or like a tournament every year or anything like that. They're just kind of happy to be in their little like group of friends and playing Warhammer together. Like if you have a storefront, you're probably selling to more than 12 people, right? Like
yeah.
so,
Sure.
uh, so So I do wonder. I often wonder about like what is the platonic state of Warhammer, or the as in Plato, not I don't know, like free from love, but what is the essential or quintessential state of Warhammer? And we often talk about it from a tournament standpoint, but that's not like, again, that's I don't think that's the representative one. I don't think
I think
that's.
that's
Go ahead.
it's just like that's the bit of the iceberg you can see, but there's obviously
Yeah.
more to it underneath, and it's very easy to talk about what the iceberg looks like from you can see, but there's much more underneath. I think most of the groups in Japan, the Warhammer groups or gaming groups, not just necessarily Warhammer, tend to be like us. There's some like north of Tokyo, west of Tokyo, in Tokyo, and stuff, and they're just groups of friends. Uh, Often they'll be like foreign people like myself who will like then have foreign friends, and then obviously Japanese people who get involved, get interested,
Hmm.
and they just get together. Sometimes they'll like hire out a community center, and they can do the gaming there because you've got all the table space and stuff, and that can have up to like 10, 12, 15 people in it.
Hmm.
That's quite common. So it's everything's kind of very home based, but going out to little different places.
Hmm.
So one of the best the way that everyone, all these different like sort of little groups, these little acorns of groups all linked, is through Facebook. Bizarrely, there's like it is a tabletop gamers of Japan, which is a big face group, which is run by some people out of the local army base, the American army base,
Hmm.
over in the west side of Tokyo,
Yeah.
Zama Bay, it's called, and that's got like 800 members in it,
Yeah.
and that's like a big sort of it's a hub that everything kind of links to. So if you're looking for new players or looking for people near where you live, you kind of go there, and then kind of you know me find other players or people near you. Then from there, and from there, if a couple of people get together, then they can start their own little club,
Hmm.
find gamers that way. It's very like that. It's like a little
Yeah.
like a half-made web. It's all kind of joined together, and you just follow the strand in,
Yeah.
and then strand back out to find people who are actually connected to you. You didn't realize we're connected to you.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, the world's a lot smaller than you realize once you start, like you said, connecting the web. I mean, this anything you focus on, if it's writing or film or whatever, you'll wrestling. I've got a wrestling podcast coming up later on in January that I'm gonna advertise to the three very passionate people in Chat Gang who love wrestling. Have a former ECW star coming on there. Um, but it's fascinating. The more you like focus in on these like communities, the more you realize they're connected to like everyone else. Like Henry Cavill is big 40K guy, but chances are if you're playing 40K, you've probably played someone who's played Henry, or sold a box of minis to Cavill or something like that. So like it's really fascinating, and I from it makes me feel rather optimistic about the world, quite frankly. Like I get down on especially social media. I think it's easy to do, but seeing it used for good to sort of like network and find communities. As a curmudgeonly old ancient gamer, not the oldest among us, but in my day, pre-internet, you either got your friend into the game you wanted to play or you didn't play the game. Like if you
Yeah,
couldn't if you couldn't propagandize and sell a couple of your friends on it, you weren't playing it. So,
mm.
um,
Well, that's something happened here as well. Now in Japan, there's a big sort of collecting models sort of community, like subculture,
yeah,
like with all the gun Gundam and stuff and all that. It's a massive sort of painting community, huge. There's also a big sort of card gaming community, like
yeah.
Magic the Gathering, obviously very popular here,
No,
or
no player
Pokemon,
named Kenta from
all
Japan. Yeah.
stripes, yeah. All stripes of that sort of ilk is very popular. They have gaming shops where you can just go there, rent a table for a day or for an afternoon, a few hours, whatever, and play board games, play card games, play whatever you want. You can bring your own stuff, use the stuff that's in the store. There's a big sort of subculture of that. It's huge part of otaku culture that way. And so people within that community who might like go in there and just play games now and again, they're like, a lot of them are aware of Warhammer, never played it. They just know the name, and they
Uh-huh.
know, like, they have images of it. So it's kind of there,
Uh,
but it's not. I think what GW is kind of trying to do now is just access this kind of this kernel they've seemed to have surreptitiously placed all over the place.
yeah.
Uh, and I think that's why AOS has numbers that are growing. One thing that was very popular here before COVID kind of hit, really, was Warhammer Underworlds. I've got a few boxes over there.
Yeah.
If you went into regular sort of hobby shops, of which are a lot, you'd see quite a lot of, not a lot, you'd see a few people playing Underworlds. Underworlds had quite a bit, certainly season 1 at Shadespire, had quite a lot of people interested on the Japanese side. And they were running they had the shade glass, you win a trophies and stuff. They're winning little mini tournaments like that day.
Huh.
And that got a lot of traction. That got a lot of people into AOS, like just exposing them to the models, exposing them a little bit to the lore. There's not that much lore written in the old Warhammer Underworlds boxes, but it just got that sort of into the not national, but that's the psyche of that subculture.
Yeah.
So it's kind of there. So I can only see things getting better because they've planted the kernel. They just need to water it enough that it actually sort of grows into something.
Well, I think from. I'm sorry. Go finish your.
I was going to say, but I was speaking to somebody and they were saying a lot of people who actually own Japanese people who own AOS models are there for painting it for hobby. There's some amazing like hobby painters here in Japan. Like amazing,
Yeah.
Scale model painters as well. There's amazing sort of painters all over the place.
Yeah, I was kind of part of what I was going to say. Keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, well, these people are just like they'd just be randomly painting some Maschinen Krieger or something one week. The next week they're playing like painting a Gundam model. Then they'd be painting like a Stormcast Eternal.
Yeah.
And all that's featured in these sort of hobby magazines that are very popular. That that sort of subculture reads every week, every month. Comes out, and one week it'll have some Warhammer models in there. So just as pure modelling, there's people who are just buying up the models.
Yeah.
Not playing the game, but they're buying up the models. I think that's keeping things ticking over. And obviously, AOS models are just beautiful.
Right. Yeah. See, I think I have to think that Games Workshop's like real way into like I think you call it, to use your own phrase earlier, you said like the sort of otaku, like the broader otaku culture, like the Japanese like sort of gamer nerd sort, is sort of via more the hobby side, and I think Games Workshop's aware of like how strong their hobby can be as a game, like we're a minis company first is like the old go-to line.
Yes, yeah.
But like with with appealing to the sort of like minis agnostic people who just want to paint in Japan, and like you said, I follow a handful of Japanese painters that I've never talked to. I just follow them on Twitter because like I see they're really good minis and I like seeing them in my feed, and then like 1 week it's a bust of a game I don't recognize, and like maybe there's a Gundam the next week, and the blends and the colors and the depth of detail I see, just this needs to be in my feed, so I like click the follow button. And then you see the occasion, like I saw it because I saw them do one Warhammer model once, and then like now I get to see all the stuff, and I think there's something to that. Like I think there's a, I don't want to like microaggress that Japanese people work harder than anyone else and do stuff like that, but there is a sort of like Japanese excellence or what is it called? Like a sort of like it's that Shintoism, right? Like that sort of like distilled down, that sort of like like fixating on doing everything excellently or whatever is the old
getting to your perfect space goes the Zen kind of feel to it.
Yeah. So but no, I think hobby is probably like there, and Shadespire boxes, quite frankly, are some of our strongest like pound for pound models. Like the minis that show up in Shadespire are just excellent. Real quick, Gore Gruntabell with the tier 1 sub, thank you so much for that. It's like Jingle Bells or something, like Gore Gruntabell. No, I don't know. That's funny. Good name. Good name.
Good image to it. I like that.
Yeah, Gore Gruntabell. Yeah, no, I think hobby and painting and stuff like that is especially like alluring with Warhammer. It doesn't matter where or who you are. It's quite frankly, I think we have some of the strongest minis around in wargaming. Now there are dedicated like sort of miniature hobby companies that don't have a game attached to it and all they care about is releasing excellent minis, and they're obviously going to have a high caliber. That's where you see a lot of like really great busts and dioramas and stuff like that. And I wonder, Games Workshop's done a little bit more of the diorama type stuff now. There was that one.
Oh, with some of the videos, yeah. The Slaneshi champion and stuff. What's his name? The big fat dude.
Yeah,
That was.
Glutos. You've got Catacross. I think
Oh yeah.
prior, yeah, my boy Catacross. Really, uh, you know, I think redefining what minis are. But even before that, there was that 40K, like Primarch or whatever, the Nurgle one. It's just this huge sprawling.
Voltarian,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah. Stuff like that were just really, as far like really just making the minis as art pieces, not just game
Mm.
pieces. And a Games Workshop going in that direction a little bit more, um, you know, that's that tip of that iceberg. Like a lot of us play the game, a lot of the people I talk to play the game, but there are really so many people that just like, paint. And I think that that's probably got to have a little bit more like international appeal when you have these sort of fractured communities, wherever you are.
Yeah, definitely. So that's definitely a thing. That's definitely a thing here. Yeah, there's probably there might be more painters than there are players. I'm not sure, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Gorgruntabel informing me, think the old Will Ferrell SNL gag, but with Iron Jaws. That's even better. Like you have a fever, and the only prescription is more Gorgruntabel. I like it. Thank you for the sub. Yeah. No, So I guess sort of talking about like sort of diversifying. You actually have like you have the Jugs Twitter account and YouTube channel, but then you also have like the Tavern Keeper. Like, how do you, when you're not playing or when you're not? I mean, I think you had a pretty firsthand lesson these last couple of years. But when you're not really playing, like how, what are the ways? I guess what is the Jugs approach to Warhammer and sort of like appealing, to like maybe the lore perspective, the hobby perspective, like what kind of approach is it for your club, and how do you, I guess you make content too, and that content you do put
Mm.
out. So
Yeah, I mean, with the YouTube videos, we did like many years ago. We did like an old battle report. Not me, my the person who we set it up together. A friend of mine, John. We did a battle report for an old Warhammer Fantasy game back in 2011 or something, and that got quite a lot of people watching it and stuff. But he was such a nightmare for him to sort of put it together. He's like, I never want to do that again. Never ever want to do that again. But I quite enjoyed that, but didn't do anything with it until like Corona, and then because we couldn't get together and we were going to play games remotely. I thought, well, I can just video these and just turn them into battle reports. So that was just a way to sort of connect us and keep things ticking over and feel like we're still together and doing things,
mm-hmm.
even though we weren't physically getting together.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how sort of the content creation side of stuff started.
Well, it's been really cool seeing like the minis. You do these little like sort of like mini parades almost, where you'll kind of like do like a video update of either some different hobbies that's progressing, or you'll have like one mini that's featured. Like that stuff's been really cool to watch. So is that
Yeah,
one member? Is that
that's
just you, or is that like a
that's
bunch of people?
mostly me, and people send me their, any other members who are painting. Not that many at the minute.
Shame on you. Need to shame them. Some good old fashioned just shaming them into painting.
Come on, paint. I try to. So I'm very religious with that. So like every Wednesday that'll come out. And so this is what I've done. And so this is it's finished stuff. It's like it's a deadline thing. I respond very well to deadlines. I
Mm-hmm.
respond very well. I respond to deadlines. I don't know if I respond well to them. I respond to deadlines.
Yeah.
So I set myself deadlines. Need to have at least one model done by Wednesday, and that's what I'll show. And I'll try and get other people to do the same.
Yeah.
And nobody does. So it's just that.
You're working
just
on them. You'll get them. You'll get them.
I think as soon as we start playing a bit more now, like Corona numbers here are in like single figures, which is amazing. Like if you think
Yeah. We're probably gonna kill 1 million Americans by in the next like 3 months here. We're at, last time I looked at them was probably a month ago. There were 777,000 dead, and like the daily numbers were like kind of appalling. And like, all right, best country in the world, everybody.
Oh, well, Blighty's the same. England's the same. Yeah, it's all kind of bad.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we can get back. Anyway, here we can get back to some sort of normal.
Sorry, I just doomered out of nowhere. I'm not normally like the doomer guy. It's just like crap. Sorry. No, I'm sorry, everybody. I'm gonna have my editor fix that one in post. We'll take that out there. No, your numbers are doing good. Probably looking at some.
So we can get back to some sort of gaming, face-to-face gaming, which has been something that's missing for quite a while now. Where was I going with that? I think that's about it, really. So hopefully, we'll be playing more, so that'll incentivize people to paint more, which is kind of what I wanted. So yeah, doing the little videos each week's just a deadline thing for me to get stuff done and not sort of just sit on my laurels. I've got loads of models painted, but there's lots more I want to paint. So that's the thing.
You also, you do the sort of every Wednesday you drop like under the brush video, up to 87 of them now. And I did share the link here in chat to your YouTube. And looking up JUGS on YouTube might not be as productive as you think, everybody. So
it's not that it doesn't come up in the way you may hope.
So I typed out Japan United Gaming Society. I was already subscribed, so maybe that's why it popped up immediately. But I actually typed out the Japan United Gaming Society and then just Warhammer, and then like you were the first few results. And like I said, I'm already subscribed, so everyone can like subscribe to that. Every Wednesday you get to see some minis. But you also do the Master Tavern Keepers, like history of the old world, which is yeah. So you want to take me through like maybe a little bit of conceit of that, and I mean that's almost as prolific. I mean that's almost as prolific as your minis, and there's some production behind that, and like you kind of like really So you want to take me through like the conceit of that and sort of the process?
Yeah, that stemmed from we were playing. It was after a few years ago we played like Silver Tower and like and I had an old game, Advanced Hero Quest, from years ago, before Warhammer Quest. It was like the iteration before Warhammer Quest. I happened to have that copy with me, and so a few years ago we did like an AOS version of that. But then a friend of mine who's really into Oldhammer wanted to play some Advanced Hero Quest, so I said, "Okay, we'll play a game," and I recorded it and turned it into a little bat rep, and then. Because it was wanted to be a little ongoing story, I just added a local tavern keeper just to sort of tell what's going on.
Yeah, narrator. Adding a narrator. Yeah.
Yeah, so just a little narrator there, and then there'd sort of be like a back rep, a little bit of chat from him, a back rep, and then like a bit more chat from him. And there's the post-adventures bit where he kind of speaks as well. And then just slowly started building up into this story. And so... because doing the back reps is such a time-consuming thing, it takes hours and hours and hours and hours. I was like, okay, just putting out some content each week, I'll just kind of fill out the rest of the world, because lots of the players weren't really aware of the old world per se. And so every week I just put out like a little. It was supposed to be just like a short 10-minute thing, and just tells them about the world and stuff. And then slowly it kind of grew into a big telling everything in the world. And then also, because I'm quite into AOS and some of the others aren't, I wanted to link the old world stuff to the new stuff. So I make sure it's encompassing all of that. So even though it's set in the 15th century in the old world, there's lots of little AOS hints here and there, little nuggets that will come to fruition if you read the lore of the Age of Sigmar. But also wanted to consolidate lots of old lore from like 1st, 2nd, 3rd edition, 4th edition, 5th edition Warhammer, which tends to be ignored. When it came to like 6th edition, a lot of stuff just got dumped.
Yeah, that's the era of Warhammer I'm from, like for Warhammer Fantasy Battle.
Yeah, it would have been. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was I started in 4th edition with the Army Book Undead, and then then there was and there was Vampire Counts in 5th edition, and Tomb Kings was supposed to come out. No idea where that book ever went. Love my Tomb King brothers and sisters, NBs out there. So no harsh in their mellow. No, I just so I got into that, and then basically I went off to college, and then like 40K was the game of the land, so I played 40K. Like you play what your friends play, right? So I played 40K, and by the time I came back, like I'd done 4th, 5th, about 6th edition, I believe. By the time I came back, like it was a different landscape. The world had blown up. Like end times happened. I missed all the end times. the narrative I've sort of culturally osmosed now. Like I understand what would happen just through conversation, but never read any end time stuff. Never really. I I'm told that the vampire counts battle tome in the last edition there. What was that, seventh or eighth? Would have been eighth, maybe.
Eight came last one,
Yeah,
eighth, yeah.
I'm told that they were like public enemy number one. People really hated like our hero hammer vampire, which honestly
Yeah,
just
a
fills
lot
me with warmth and delight. Hearing that, like, had I still been playing in the end times, people would have hated my vampires. And honestly, your delicious tears sustain me. But this is a really cool project because there's sort of a synthesis between, like you said, that AOS, but then also that like that old world shine. I mean, quite frankly, I feel like you're positioned really well when the old world comes back to have content exactly for what people in AOS need to kind of like go backwards. So, I mean, this is the problem of us like small content creators. We're really awesome, but like not a lot of people are seeing our stuff, and so I really hope that after this episode gets out there, you get like, I don't know, like say 50 more subs or something like that, and that people watch your stuff.
Well, that's definitely the idea behind it. Because I was going here. There's a lot of expats who've come over who are like long in the tooth, let's say,
Mhm.
and they have fond memories of like old Warhammer and stuff. And they have we talked about it earlier, actually, trigger words. If you mention like Age of Sigmar, it's like the blinders go down, it's like a snarl, and admittedly, like start of first edition was a big mess. But that kind of initial kind of misstep, that the image of that misstep, almost in the way it was released and sort of advertised and whatnot, has remained in many of the older gamers who kind of quit with 8th or even before that. Whereas now, obviously, with the 2nd edition and then now 3rd edition, the way that the lore has been developed, now the rules have been developed, it's become a very different beast. I mean,
Yeah.
It's become its own thing. It's become as equal to, maybe even surpassing, I'd say, the old Warhammer lore and stuff, in the way it's cohesive and full of interest. Because I'll come back to it in a minute. But anyway, because lots of older players here have this kind of blinders on when it comes to this, I want to kind of, to those people, kind of introduce some stuff that's going to happen in AOS in this kind of slice of stuff that they're familiar with, and also vice versa. For like when thinking about like the old world, hopefully coming back whenever it does, like have that sort of there for players who might want to get into that. I'd like to get into that as well.
Well, or anyone who's playing like Total Warhammer right now, like Total Warhammer 2.
Total Warhammer's a massive.
Yeah, huge. I mean, there's probably more people playing Total Warhammer right now than Age of Sigmar, and that is not to downplay how many people play Age of Sigmar, because it is highly successful. It has been crushing it. Like, again, numbers wise, like Games Workshop went up like 100%, like just crushing their sales, like even through a global pandemic, to where they're now at like a better profit margins after operational costs than like Apple and crap. Like they're just like, I don't. Games Workshop puts a lot of effort into maintaining the small company, like humble thing as their sort of image. They are, make no mistake, this is a $5 billion after operating cost company, which means like what they're actually valued at, liquidated wise, is probably like something like $26 billion, like just an insane company. And see, now I derailed myself there. Where was I going with that? To not to downplay how successful Age of Sigmar is. It has been thoroughly, even like that first year was rocky, but even going into the that first GHB point and kind of onward, I think it's been clear how much more and more successful they've become from like sort of first GHB forward.
Yeah, that was definitely the turning point. Definitely.
Yeah. Like
I remember getting that and like showing it, because I was the only person who was really following anything in the first year in my group. I was kind of on Garage Hammer, which you've been on yourself, of course.
Twice.
I was like following all the lore along with that. The books were so expensive to buy, I wasn't going to follow it that way. And having dropped God knows how much money on the end times books, which were then like Oh, you can't use it anymore. Well, sort of thing. Didn't really want to buy anymore, so I followed the law that way. But as soon as the GHB came out, it was like, look, we've got points, we've got rules, you can use your minis.
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
What a glorious misstep. You know, like I understand that there's an approachability and like wanting people to just like, you know, play, but like gamers need something codified. Like we just I don't think we necessarily need it, but we've certainly been indoctrinated into a world of needing rules and just to be told how to play a little bit. Like it's just part of the brain. Like
yeah.
don't get me wrong, as an avid RPG gamer, I will immediately reject any rule I don't like. But you got to give me a framework of a system that Vampire the Masquerade. It's probably my
Oh,
latest passion. Yeah,
great.
yeah. Fifth edition. Their conversation going on, and so this is rabbit hole number one. Everybody, welcome. You know, if you're playing if you're playing the Age of Sigmar RantCast drinking game at home, this would be where you take a shot of milk right now. No, the with Vampire the Masquerade, fifth edition, you're seeing a similar rift in the community in VTM that you do with like Old Hammer, so-called Old Hammer, and I don't mean it disrespectfully, just as a colloquialism. And AOS, you saw that sort of rift happen. You're seeing a little bit of it with sort of like the 20th anniversary edition, which is sort of like a reboot revision of the revised edition from like the late 90s, early 2000s, which is kind of like I think really the heyday of World of Darkness prior to the making the World of Darkness become the game, right? They sort of blew up Vampire and all that stuff, but that's a tangent within a tangent. But right now you're seeing this sort of weird, like little bit of a schism within the Vampire community, where like, oh no, 20th ed is better, no 5th ed's better, and I'm kind of a stand for 5th ed because I've really latched on to the Hunger Dice rule, and this is tying back into what I was talking about. Like gamers, we like rules. Like I will immediately like. I noticed that there's no disciplines that I liked before, like Dementation, which is a Malkavian one, where they like essentially the world gets they're so like in their own world that the world around them becomes their own world. Like it's like it's it's basically equal parts illusion and like domination. Like it's just crazy. And I always love Dementation. Like, oh no, Dementation doesn't exist anymore. It's just it's just one amalgam power in Dominate. And I'm like, all right. I mean, it cleans up the system, but like I feel like I'm missing stuff. So what do? I'll make the rule. I don't care. But I have this like core mechanic that I absolutely adore, and that's what really makes me kind of stand for 5th edition as opposed to 20th anniversary edition. The other part of that being like I've played revised. I lived in that world for forever. I don't need to like keep reliving my childhood. Like I'm just like I'm good. I still own my 1st edition Milwaukee by Night book. Like I can go back to that world anytime I want to. So I like the new thing. But again, for me it's like rules. Like maybe it's just me. I think everyone's got their own way, but I do think broadly speaking gamers need some rules to latch onto. Rules tell you that what you're doing is like real. Like I can look at all the sweet minis in the world and like if all I do is paint, that's probably enough for me. But if as a gamer, as someone who wants to play games, like I gotta find a rule that I'm like something that codifies it for me in the world. That's why like I love the Castle Dynasty. The Blood Knights are playing an RPG. They level up. Like that's so cool. Like, stuff like that just where a rule makes you passionate. I'd imagine that every army that truly resonates with somebody out there has something like that. Like Corn players, looking at Scarbrand, just going, he gets angrier, like just losing their minds at it. Like, this is all to criticize them not having rules effectively. Like they didn't like there was no rails, there was no way to communicate to the players like how you should play the game. So how do you get excited about like these minis if you can't really like if there's no Rosetta Stone for taking them from my hand to a game? And
you just need that. Basically, the structure gives you a commonality of language.
Yeah.
So you both haven't a road in, and otherwise you need a games master to do it all for you. He gives you the commonality of language. He's the bridge that joins two players together. Without that, you need the structure of rules, like
Yes.
points, even just so you don't have to have a 2-hour conversation before you play every game.
Right.
Just to establish where you are. And if you look, actually, obviously, with me doing the podcast, that's my podcast, by the way.
Oh.
We're looking back at all these old editions of Warhammer, all the lore there. First edition was Warhammer was like first edition AOS the first year. No points, just like RPGing with minis and over just grassy fields or whatever. It was very much like that. And then with like second edition, you got like points and stuff coming in. So there was a lot of similarities, and yeah, it was interesting to see them make that mistake again. No, 20 years down the line.
Yeah, no, it's like you said that I think that's a really great way of putting it. Like when you play like a tabletop RPG, you do have like a game master to establish a common language, or to be like a Rosetta Stone, right? Like to translate the players' actions for each other and give everyone like sort of a common like sort of filter. And without that, when you're playing a game without a GM, like what do you do? No, it's actually like kind of a great observation.
And at the moment in the podcast, we're doing a retelling of an old second edition.
So what
scenario
podcast would that be, real quick? Like you get for chat gang who maybe want to check it out. What podcast?
A podcast would be the Master Tavern Keepers History of the Old World.
There you go.
Quite a mouthful.
Yeah,
Anyway.
yeah. All right.
So we're doing a retelling.
So you got to get that shameless self promotion in there. I'm just.
It's got to be.
But yeah.
So that's an old. Actually, it was featured in last year, was it? When everyone was getting very excited about vampirates, unfortunately, they did like the Warhammer community did a poster with some ghoul kings who were running a play, and that was the tragedy of Macbeth. It was about a year or so ago. Yeah. Anyway, so the actual original scenario was an old second edition one, and it's got the scenario, and it's got all these. It reads like an RPG. It's got like sheets for the players. It's got scenarios with like all the forces on, but it's Games Master. It's written everywhere. You need a Games Master to run that game, and that didn't have points either at that point. It was because you needed that Games Master to decide everything. The forces were decided for you. So, yeah, you needed a Games Master, but not everyone has that. So points.
Well, that means you need a third player, right? Like you need a third player, and you need that third player. Like we in the RPG community, we have enough problems with forever GMs and like all kinds of stuff. You need a forever GM in a game where I'm supposed to be able to paint my minis and just like play a game against somebody. Like, oh my gosh, right? Like I can't, the logistics.
Can't imagine trying to run a tournament like that.
Yeah. Oh man.
The amount of TOs and their helpers you'd need, one for every table.
Yeah. Yeah.
It would be yeah. So it's not.
To
it's not,
be
it's
honest,
not
though, like it sounds kind of awesome. Like
it would be cool.
Challenge accepted. Animosity is kind of doing that a little bit, right? Like Animosity, they've got their sort of like their storytellers that help translate and communicate. Are you familiar with the Animosity campaigns?
No.
Oh my gosh. Man, no, you should tell everyone in your club about this. Animosity campaign is essentially a remote narrative Warhammer event. Takes place around, I want to say, July each year. What it is there's essentially shout out Animosity campaign because I've had them on twice now. But it's done remotely, so you can play like wherever and stay connected, and essentially like there's some sort of like arcing narrative, and then like each week you have like you're on various like syndicates or it shifts a little bit like what your team is or whatever, but they have this essentially like unfolding narrative where they have a couple different like storytellers that sort of like help recount what the sort of player side of it was for that week, and there's little like story prompts each week, sort of driven by the players. So like if there's 4 warring nations, and like you can so yeah, you're gonna submit your undead army for that, and someone's going to have this army and so on and so forth, but you're all part of that coalition, and 4 warring nations for the MacGuffin, the tower, the whatever it is. And like one week you're like, okay, well, what if we like sabotage like nation two's blimp or whatever, and then you have to like essentially play through it. They have an algorithm for determining how some decisions get made. They're not going to tell us how the sausage is made. They never should. How like what decisions work out. And then you sort of have like essentially like these I guess campaign points, or they've got their own colloquialism for it. That like each week you have so many things that you're supposed to submit. It can be play a game with a friend. It can be do some hobby. It can be write a story, and like there's a bunch of different ways to like kind of get your sort of points for the week. I think there's like 7 different ways to get points, and you max out doing 3 of them. So if you hobby, write a story, and play a game with your buddy, you can sort of submit to the weight of effectiveness of your faction for the week. And it's really awesome. Like
that sounds cool. That sounds something on up our alley, so to speak.
Yeah,
because during the Hope thing they did back in AOS 1, was it? They did that where you go to the GW store and you're like, I painted this unit, or it's like I had this game.
Yep.
And you get like points off for your faction.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. I think it's it's this collaborative event, and it sounds right up your alley actually. I hope I'm going to get a message from Alex later. He's going to be like, dude, you totally got everything wrong that you told them about my I shouted you out. No, it's pretty. I haven't played in it the last couple years, and I think I'm going to get peer pressured into playing into it this year. So, but no, Dr. Imp asks, is your podcast on Spotify? So
no, it's not actually. I resolved that. It's on. I think it's on Google. It's on iTunes. It's on Podbean. There might be another one it's on. I can't remember. But yeah, but not Spotify. I'll have to resolve that. I'll sort that out.
Yeah. Yeah, I've interviewed them 2 times. Gore Grunta. They had Nuno on the last time, along with Alex and another one. Previous time, or no, just Alex the first time. I hope I remembered enough to recount it properly. So thanks for the affirmation there, Gore Grunta. I want to do the next one too, says Heavy D6. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I think, just kind of in the theme and in the vein of sort of cross-pollinating communities, making sure that you sort of build a grassroots, community in your own, even abroad, or what is abroad to me, and obviously, not to you. Like, doing that stuff, it takes, like, effort. It takes, like, a passionate individual to sort of drive it and, stuff like that. But there's also these ways to, evolve that, too. And I think it's really... passion is the key, right? Like if when you run out of passion, then it's hard to keep everyone interested in playing games. And
yes, which is part of the idea behind the podcast thing as well. It's just like in between games, just keeping people in the world, invested in their characters and whatnot.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Oh, well, I'll look deeper into that. Excellent.
Yeah. If anything else, just steal some good ideas, right? Like, I mean, that's steal like an artist is really my motto.
Best homage is stealing.
Right. Good artists borrow, great artists steal. Sincerest form of flattery is imitation. Like, look, there's a lot of compelling evidence that you just borrow ideas from each other. I was in the last one for a little bit until work took over. Yeah, the last couple of years for work for me have been a little too rough to commit to anything like that. But I'm hoping for a career change this winter, so we'll see.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Get out of the field and behind a computer, so that most of my life is behind a computer.
Not free time.
But I'd have free time back so I can go to the gym and stuff. So it's a sacrificing my like job that lets me be outdoors all day, and which is actually kind of cool. But I'd have more time because I won't be working like 12 to 14-hour days. I kind of interrupted you there with the one campaign thing you were talking about. If you want to reset that or kind of go where you're going with the GMing and the stuff like that. Sorry.
Where was I got up to? I think that was
That
it.
was it. Okay. Yeah. All right. Good. I have a nasty habit of interrupting my own brain waves and other people's. So, I guess we kind of covered like a sort of the inception and getting together and stuff like that. I guess what's next for Jugs or even you personally? Like, what's your focus kind of going forward?
I think now with the pandemic having subsided here, it's just to get more gaming in, a lot more different types of gaming as well, and try and get some more players in, playing regularly.
Hmm.
So just getting back to normality, I think, is the main aim.
Yeah.
And then some of us who've fallen, kind of not fallen off the bandwagon, so to speak, but just kind of got a bit disheartened and didn't want to do any more. They still want to play, but like just kind of feel
Hmm.
just sort of re-energizing those and hopefully get them back in. That's I think that's the main thing.
Do
Uh,
you do you think TTS is a useful tool for like even like using it in like the local scene, not just to like play against people across the world, which is I think there's an obvious advantage there, but as like a tool for like a local club or to sort of maybe help shake some of that inertia.
Potentially, I've not actually used GTS during this period at all. We used to use cameras and models and stuff. Uh, so yeah, I'm not sure. I suppose because essentially I'm a hobbyist first.
Yeah, yeah,
I
okay, all right.
that incentivizes me to hobby because that's what gives me the most sort of psychological utility. I guess I get a
Yeah,
lot
yep,
of pleasure
yep.
from painting and modeling and stuff, and I know certainly quite a few other members do as well.
Uh-huh.
Uh, the two main driving things I think for our club are incentive wise is modeling, painting, gaming, but gaming really as a conduit to socializing and getting together.
Right, right. The
So
gaming side is, and this is something I've struggled with these last couple of years. The gaming side is where I express all the stuff, and I get to like, yeah, like we socialize, but like, the hobby or even building a clever list for me without being able to like sort of take it on tour, like I don't get the full psychological utility is a great way to describe it. I don't get like the full return on my investment without that social puzzle piece bringing it all together.
mm,
Um, it it like it's even though I do like the game a lot, without that sort of like amplifying effect of like those sort of like other things that I'm interested in coming together in that moment where like it's on the table. Like I feel like the reward for a hobbyist isn't just like having the model painted; it's putting it on the table and then like someone getting to like ooh ah it a little bit, right? Like so I think there's like I've struggled to get into TTS myself. I look at all my friends around and they're like high fiving like a NASA launch and stuff like that, and I'm just like I don't get it because for me, like the physical table is such an important component of it. This is Lily. Hi, ganked my daughter. What's going on? It's been a while since one of
oh.
these. Good night, sweetie. She, see, it was bedtime an hour ago, and so now we gotta like do all the things we possibly can to delay bedtime. Get out of bed. I need a drink of water. I gotta go to the bathroom. I forgot to give Dad a hug and a kiss.
Well, delaying tactics, very sad.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, she's already a gamer. She's already gaming the system.
Like you, actually, my friend John, who set up Jugs with us, he's very much I suppose a Johnny type.
Mm-hmm.
And so he really likes, taking a really underpowered army, making a really interesting list, putting it together, and then just like stomping faces with it, which he does very well. He's got that brain.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just a Timmyist who wants to tell stories. Really, just a Timmy who wants to tell stories.
I don't
And
think
so
there's
I just
anything wrong with that.
just want to paint my models, get them on the table, see what happens. Invariably lose, it's fine. But yeah, I just like that bit. So physically face-to-face gaming is where that really can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with TTS, obviously, it's just I suppose John, you can speak better than me for this. I suppose if you put together a very clever list,
Mm-hmm.
then you can get some returns on it. And if you're a spike and you just want to win, then that's probably giving you the most rewards, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
But beyond, it varies on the person. So for me, it doesn't give me like returns really for what I'd be investing in it from that point, because I don't just want to play games. I don't just want to play games. Yeah,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, no, I'm not knocking TTS. I think it's a very, very valuable tool, especially if you're in the early phases of getting into Warhammer. I think it's very valuable in like learning an army, seeing if you want to buy an army. Getting a
Mm.
I know I'm one of the weirdos out there who'll trace basis on paper, and I'll like play like with little sheets of paper and the right base sizes,
Uh,
or proxy, just like, oh, guess this vampire lord on zombie dragon is a glucose today, and I'm going to see if how this works in an army, and I'll proxy like that, and I've got like a couple friends who like we're interested in seeing what works, and TTS kind of can take the place of that, but like I'm
yeah, yeah.
not taking my sheets of paper to the hobby store, if that makes sense, and so like TTS
Mm.
never stops being the sheets of paper on a desk for me, of seeing does this work. And like seeing does it work is like, okay, cool, check that box. But then it's like getting to show it off in a face to face conversation. Like, if people can't see how fucking clever I am, what's the point? Like, that's like, if they can't see how fucking clever and witty and like how expressive I am, like if they can't see all those like things, then I do lose some of that value. Um, Quarantine hit me kind of hard in respect of my drive for Warhammer. Obviously, my podcast kept going, and I had a passion for it, and stuff was still there. But
Mm.
there was something lost in translation of the physically doing Warhammer, because without that, like being able to like go see my friends again and like go out and take it on tour and stuff like that, it didn't feel. Again, it was missing an essential piece for me. And I know
Yeah.
I'm probably not alone in that. I think it sounds like a lot of people had a similar experience. Like, I looked over, like I was outside in the rain, staring inside at some of my friends just absolutely crushing their backlog. They're like, I finally have all this time because of lockdown. I'm painting everything. The backlog's disappearing. I have no pile of potential anymore. I have burned all my potential. And like seeing some people just like grind games of TTS, hashtag getting good, playing games, and I'm like, what's, and I just kind of like disconnected. I don't know. It's a me thing. It's not a, other people thing. It's just,
Mm. I don't think
introspective.
that's so uncommon either, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, actually getting hobby done was quite tricky during that period because I was at home, and so I've got two young children. Well, I've got two children with special needs, one very young, one older.
Yeah.
So that's like if I'm at home all the time, basically I'm looking after them,
Yeah.
my wife, and so that actually made hobbying more difficult. So my backlog didn't really reduce, apart from just I got less time perhaps. But I think gaming side of things is really part of my sort of support network,
Yeah.
in addition to family, friends and stuff, who like give me mental stability. I think
Yeah.
that's a lot. And without that big chunk, because a lot of my gaming buddies, I really like, they're just my best friends, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
So having that chunk ripped out of your own sort of mental support network is like losing an arm or losing a limb or something. It really hits you.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, it definitely had an impact on me and certain many others as well.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. But
in a similar way.
yeah, I think one of the, me the perpetual optimist that I am, always trying to look for that glass being half full. I think that the pandemic has, for the most part, taught a lot of people that maybe weren't aware of it before, or thinking about it, or thinking in those terms, the value of mental health. I think when you're able to go, 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 you never really have to stop and think about, sort of the processes in your life, or the emotional support network, or socialization and being social with people as essential, like as actually
Mm.
being necessary for humanity. Like, a lot of us like to think we are islands unto ourselves, even the lonerist amongst us, and yet, it turns out, just like that one party you don't go to a year that you always kind of count on, or like any one of those little things that even sort of the most introverted, or the most, loner amongst us kind of, take for granted, realizing how much you'd taken it for granted, I think was a a little bit of a wake up call, and I think in a good way. Like I think a lot of my hope, my thoughts is that people are going to be a little bit more aware of their mental health and their social needs going forward. Being like, because it sucks. It sucks. It's just there's no way around it, right? And it sounds like it's kind of awesome that like it sounds like you're on the tail end of it there, um, and looking at doing some games again and getting that social side in. So like I'm actually like really happy for you. That sounds awesome. I'm looking.
Yeah.
Am I going to see Jugs bat reps like of full scale AOS games coming up? Like is that?
That's the hope for the coming year and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Mm.
definitely try to some small scale stuff to start with and just build up to it. But yeah, definitely that's on.
Yeah.
That's there in the on the back burner at the moment. It's like just getting models painted up at the minute.
Yeah. What do we got here?
This one is just a little git. Little git. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Fanatic. Nice.
My son, he's 8. Because he's got cerebral palsy, so he can't walk or can't really articulate his fingers very well and stuff. But he does enjoy gaming, so he's in his wheelchair. So I'll get him to help roll dice and stuff, or tell me what he wants to do with models and things. And so anyway, he's quite latched onto the new Auric book.
Does he like the Cruel Boys? Is it the Cruel Boys or is it the traditional orcs? Yeah.
No, it's the Savage Orcs. He really likes the Savage Orcs. He's like, oh, they're not the.
That's the thing. Is like
with the tactics there.
There's that crisis of conscience of the parent. You want to stoke the passions of your child, but you also don't want them to.
If you'd just gone IJ, he'd be like, yeah, you can just like walk all over me, you'll be fine. I've got the models.
Yeah.
He's like, I quite like the Savage Orcs. So.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love gaming as a sort of like equalizer in the world. Like gaming is someplace that everyone can truly come together and play games and stuff like that. And like obviously with even with like some disabilities, there are ways that you can account and adjust to make everybody able to play games, which is something I think is very very important. Like it really is. Like I know I go into my like dirty political spiels sometimes here on my own show, but for the most part, like you can suspend like a lot of the stuff going on and just like game together. Like tabletop RPGs, everyone's equal at a tabletop RPG setting. Like and I think with a little accommodation, Warhammer can be equal. I know Coach was talking about, or I'm sorry, it was Clint was talking about one of the things he was proudest of was actually someone in a wheelchair coming to CanCon and like being able to accommodate that. And I'm like, awesome, yeah. Like sometimes it's space, sometimes being able to have like an assistant there, like to move minis for you, like things like that. Like being able to normalize some stuff like that, so that we have like the ability. Like there's literally no reason that you can't just play make believe with your friends, right? Like that's that's what gaming is. Putting a little like framework on make believe, but it's just playing make believe with your friends in the various ways, and everyone can do that. And that's what I think is wonderful about gaming. That's why I'm a gamer. That's why I love gaming. That's why it's my favorite thing. We got a daughter on cam tonight and my corgi on cam. Like we're just checking all the RantCast milk drinking game boxes. Sorry, go on. Yeah.
But definitely, yeah, inclusivity of it is compared to other hobbies. It's good. Yeah, it's
yeah.
Something that I suppose drew me in when I was a child. It was my father that got me into sort of this sort of thing because he was a miniature painter, but you just paint anything. It was just like in the mid-80s.
Yeah. Like even like the model cars and stuff too, right? Like just whatever you could put paint on, right?
Yeah, you buy like old like pottery houses and like paint them, or old busts, they're all sort of clay busts that you put on the wall and stuff.
Yeah.
Just buy like antique shops, fix them because always chipped.
Yep.
Repaint them, stuff like that, and then he bought like metal minis because that was kind of a thing happening there. Because after D&D, this was like 85, 86.
Yeah, the pewter. I think the pewter and the metals were really prominent around that time period. Yeah.
He had like Grenadier miniatures who made lots and. Early GW stuff as well from that Citadel when it was like
Citadel, right? Yeah.
Citadel, yeah. And so yeah, so he'd just take me to the hobby shop, me and my brother to the hobby shop with him,
Yeah.
and we'd just look at minis and think, oh, they're cool, that's cool, and we'd spend our pocket money on buying little blister packs.
Yeah.
And then like Rogue Trader came out in '87, and it was like, oh, sci-fi,
Yeah.
and so it kind of really drew us in,
Yeah.
and just kind of went from there up until I went to university or college, because then it's like, yeah, I'm not doing that here, and then got into other stuff.
Well, there's I think like almost I've done 115 of these, not counting my specials and my side shows, and because there's probably done like 130, 150 RantCast type shows, let alone the two charity marathons that are basically like
Oh,
each one
so,
of those like what are those like 12 to 16 RantCasts a piece basically. I've done this a lot, and one of the commonalities I see in almost everybody that I've ever interviewed is there's this period of time where we all kind of stop playing war games, and then we come back to it, and it's like I'm just like there's some people like some newer gamers or something like that, and I'm like, you just wait, you're gonna have your like, oh no, I started playing, I'm still playing. I'm like, you're gonna have a minute where there's gonna be like a 5 year period. You're just gonna step away for whatever reason, life, finances, job, and then you're gonna come back. And like it's just really fascinating to me how we all kind of have that period where we like go out and then we kind of come back.
come back to it. Yeah,
my
absolutely a thing.
yeah, mine was.
None of
Go ahead.
my friends have not had that experience.
Yeah,
None of my gamer friends have all had that experience.
yeah. He has that Wa energy burning in his soul. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can't. It's the war clans. I I mean, just thinking about the Savage Orcs, like they had that one mini that was absolutely awesome. Was it a Shadespire or something like that, or a new hero? It was like thoroughly
Oh,
good.
they had yeah, there's a Shadespire crew. They've got like four guys in it. They're
Oh,
all really nice.
so good. And I was like,
Really,
when I saw those, I'm like, this is what Savage Orcs should be. Because some of their other sculpts are a little bit outdated. I'm like, but this shows me like you throw like like really add like more AOS to them, in forms of like more like weird AOS beasties that have been slaughtered, not just Generabone or stuff like that.
yeah,
Like really like show that these things live in the mortal realms. Put a little smash, Sigmar helmet on the base, like just whatever their sculpt team's doing. I'm like, man, and when I saw those, I really thought Games Workshop was gonna like amp up the Savage Orcs into the next War Clans book, and it just like the opposite happened. Like they just seem like the forgotten one now, and I thought that
yeah.
they were
Very neat.
not. Yeah, go ahead.
I think they've just become very niche now. But yeah, those sculpts are really good. With the ones that I'm making for my son at the moment, yeah, I'm doing a lot of converting,
Mm-hmm.
just to give them a different feel, less old world, more mortal realms,
Yeah.
and just adding loads of bits on, just like and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I forget my hobby camera's not on right now, but I made my little grave sites here, and they're like these little
Yeah.
yeah, they're these little eclectic like amalgams of like my old skeletons, my old dire wolves, but then like the new skeletons, the new zombies, like got little nods to my own Ossiarch Bone Reapers on there too. So it's like just these like pulling that all together. I mean, that's for me that's one of the greatest parts about the hobby. Even I'm not like a great hobbyist. I'm like a very middling hobbyist, and I still find ways to put my own spin on my army and to put myself in there. And I think that that's really kind of one of the essential great things about wargaming and like a sort of hobby related game like this is you do get to put a lot of yourself into the game, and I think that's very important.
Yeah, definitely. It's basically putting yourself on the tabletop
Right.
in the make believe world that you're making with your friends.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah. I guess just is there anything else you'd like to talk about, like like sort of wargaming in Japan, your club itself, or the podcast that we kind of overlooked or we talked past there?
Um, did we probably, but nothing is jumping out right now. Probably, I'll recall later, no doubt.
Yeah, yeah. I'll be like, oh man, I should ask this, I should ask that. Yeah. So I guess real quick,
Something that just popped in my head though was
go ahead.
I just
Yeah.
remember the first thing, the way that I got connected to you was talking about make believe, was the Soulbound thing that you were doing?
Yeah.
Not doing.
It's in
Yeah. Tell
hiatus. We Tom had some
for it.
scheduling conflicts, and I had scheduling conflicts, and it was just getting harder to get everyone together every week. We're gonna finish it theoretically this winter. Like we should come back. I think I could probably finish it in about 6 adventures, just to give people closure to the story. Like I know everyone wants to know what's going on with the 11th Dawn, and you have that sort of what happened to the old Soulbound story arc
But
going on a
Tom's
little. Yeah,
thing
like
there.
because his old story about his old soul binding is like nodded to, and you get this like band of misfits instead that are like bad versions or like weird versions of the old ones, like where there's like you can practically see like the tall, lanky, weird like tree man, and then like you have like the null Myriad. Well, his name was Myriad, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and you have them like kind of superimposed over each other, so you have this like weird sort of like to kind of do something like that. But no, I've got my notes. I gotta go back and watch my own episodes because I always have this problem where I'm like I don't know what I told the party and what was in the adventure, or what was in the adventure and what I haven't told the party yet. So I got to make sure like I've got some harmony there with some of the plot, and then do a recap episode. They happen to be in a Zinch tower, so I feel like I can do a really funny clip show in the Zinch tower to like reset the sort of mid-season hiatus, and then we can finish it.
Okay.
So I have this idea of like taking the Siege Tower and like kind of twisting it into like a weird like meta, like last time on DBZ episode style thing, where it's just like a clip show of like all the crazy crap, and they're like going through chambers where they're like seeing old adventures or something like that. Like so, um,
Rick, I can see.
it's Siege, doesn't have to make sense. Um,
Mm.
what a great foil! Like what a just a fantastic story device to like do whatever you need with Siege. It's brilliant. Sorry, you said you got connected by watching Soulbound or something like that.
Yeah, so do you remember doing a few paintings for it of all the characters and stuff, and that weird, fiery elephanting thing
That's right.
that you? Yeah, that
Yeah,
was fun. That was.
yeah. You didn't let me send you money. I was gonna send you a little like $10 gift voucher or whatever, and so.
I was very. No, thank you. I'm fine. Just for the fun of it. Just for the fun
Yeah,
of it.
yeah, yeah. I'll put $10 towards the cerebral palsy charity instead. So got him.
Okay, that'll do. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, there we go. Aha! I get to be a man of my word now. Um, yeah. So no. See, Soulbound is. I guess. What are your thoughts on Soulbound then? Since you're on the. We talked a little bit like sort of ambiently about like sort of game mastering and stuff like that, and in the master tavern keepers, history of the old world, you've got some narrative storytelling going on there. Just
Mm-hmm.
what's your take on Soulbound?
I think it's fantastic, and it fills out the world as well. When going back to the podcast, with researching all the stories and all the story stuff we did from retelling in that of the old world, it's really the RPGs first, second, and third edition that fill in all the gaps and add all the real meat to it.
Hmm.
And AOS was lacking that until Soulbound came out, and now Soulbound, with all the books, certainly all the Champions books that are coming out now as
Yeah.
well, really filling up the background, really making it more cohesive,
Yeah.
which it lacked in first edition. I've seen him. Phil Kelly did a great job with second edition with the rule book, the hardback,
Yeah, a
and expanded
lot of
on
narrative in that.
it.
Like, I bought it just for that. Like, that whole first, like, huge chunk of it is actually just, like, narrative and story and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
and that really needed that. It wasn't everything was kind of disparate.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, can they draw this together? Because that's a problem with early Warhammer. First couple of editions of Old Fantasy was there's loads of disparate bits that weren't really drawn together until later on,
Mhm.
and it took quite a few editions really.
Well,
And it was interesting to see that parallel in AOS happen, but then much quicker. It
well,
happened over the course of an edition, and AOS lore now is very cohesive
mhm.
compared to early Warhammer, which wasn't cohesive for a very long time. Having researched this in depth now, it's quite hard work pulling all the different bits together and making them gel together uh, in line with the canon up to the end of 8th edition.
No, that's where
So
like the rose tinted goggles will betray you again. Is a lot of people look at Warhammer Fantasy Battle or the World That Was, or Old Hammer, whatever colloquialism you want to use for it. They'll look at that and they'll go like, oh, the story was so much richer, it was so much better, it had so much more going on. I'm like, it had 20 years to develop a story. Like when you're looking at it, and I made that mistake today too, and we'll get to that in a second. Um, the you're comparing something that like it was a full like it had a full period of maturation, right? To something that was like sort of just becoming a thing. And
mm,
I stand by that the old world felt a little stuffy. Like I felt like because they were like this is
too
Tolkien
many.
but not, or this is they're using a not America, or not the world is the world map type thing, and like it felt like all the it felt like it was all like it felt like a little bit in a box, even though it was like more fleshed out and stuff like that. It felt like they could never kill off a character, because what do you do with this story that's kind of told and figured out, which is what made the blowing up the world that was such a bold move. Like it was
Yeah,
a
the end
very
time really was very invigorating because they were killing off characters. They were changing.
they were finally
They're like,
changing stuff. Yeah.
yeah, things were moving. It was like, oh, this had that led to not the end of the world. I think maybe fantasy would be in a good place.
Yeah, I agree. I
Uh,
would agree with that. Yeah. Yeah, they
but
could have easily hit a reset button instead of like wipe out the world too, right? Like they could have done
yeah,
more of a Final
but,
Fantasy VI
yeah,
thing than a full on. Go on, go on. Sorry.
yeah, but yeah, yes, they didn't have to go, 100% oblivion with everything.
Oblivion, yeah.
but they did, and it's fine actually now. At the time, I was really crestfallen, really crestfallen because it
Uh,
was really,
Kudos for
really,
using
really.
Crestfallen in a live conversation. By the way, hell yeah, like good, very good vernacular, very good cadence there. Go on. Sorry.
But yeah, it was like, and then I was like, I remember at the time just saying to my friends, okay, well, we'll just carry on playing eighth. It's fine, yeah.
Hmm.
And then the one, the White Dwarf that came out just before AOS dropped was the one that had the free Stormcast on it.
Hmm.
I was like, oh, it's a free mini, and I'll buy it. And so I bought it. Obviously, it's a free
First it
mini.
is free. Yeah, first it is free.
Yeah,
Go on.
yeah. I bought it, and I was like, it's a funny scale. He's very big. He's on a 40 millimeter base, and
Hmm.
put him together, and it's like it's actually, no, this is really well designed. I really like this. I
Hmm.
really like this. And
Yeah.
off the back of that, I
Yeah.
like bought the starter, and then just went from there. Just continued to follow it. It was just that modeling experience that kind of turned me around.
Hmm.
And had I not had that, maybe I'd be just like carrying on with old
Yeah,
editions and
you'd
all.
be one of the
Purely
one of the people on Twitter that just like gets mad at
all
people
the time.
who
Yeah, yeah.
all the time. They're just like they look over watching people play AOS and they have to show up, kick in the door, and tell them AOS sucks. And like, no, no,
The
I
one thing
go ahead.
about with the podcast I was going to say is that because it's got quite a few people following it who love the old world, same as I do, and but I want to have concepts in there and introduce stuff that's in AOS as well
Hmm.
because it follows through now. We know that more now after obviously Broken Realms than we did previous,
Hmm.
with the same characters in there and stuff have become gods and whatnot. So just like dropping
Bold move with
foreshadowing.
Marathi. Yeah, bold move with Marathi there. Actually, like
Yeah, that was really well done. It was really well done.
yeah.
It reminded me a lot of a few people said this actually. The first book of Broken Realms Marathi was very much like the first book of the End Times Nagash, uh, because they both ascended and they both changed up the worlds. And after that, it was less. It
That
was
is
less of
that when he consumes the wind of death, like, and he finally becomes a guy. Yeah.
yeah. He basically fractures the winds of magic as well, going down into the vortex,
Yeah.
and that's what starts the ball rolling, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
Yeah. Oh,
builds.
so we have Nagash to thank for the end times ultimately, and my new sweet game that I like the most in terms of Age of Sigmar.
Oh yeah, that follows through. That tracks. That
Yeah, yeah.
tracks.
So Nagash and Manfred, say you're welcome to everyone who likes Age of Sigmar. Um, I'm gonna use that from now on. Like I said, I kind of like only osmose the end times, and I was missing this necessary piece of information to be even more egotistical about how great Nagash is. So I appreciate
It's
that.
probably worth reading at least the Nagash book. Yeah,
Yeah,
you should check
I'll,
it out.
I'll check it out. Yeah, it's got the cool art though. It's got the one where he's like
Oh, it's
got
got
the hand.
the art throughout it. It's great.
Yeah,
The bit commissioned for the books are like, ooh, love the art direction. The photos they were taking of the models as well. It was very the way AOS does it now is based on that. Before it wasn't quite that, didn't have that feel to it,
yeah,
that atmosphere.
yeah. The
So it's
atmospheric, like where they were
felt like
like building sets essentially, right? Like they didn't really do that. Yeah, up
mm,
until then. Yeah, go on.
yeah, we had some of that, but they kind of took it to a next level when with the end times books. But
Yeah,
it felt like a testing ground for what AOS was going to become. But because it was such a hard shift, it just kind of turned so many people off.
yeah.
Uh,
I feel like when the old world does come out, I need to have you come back on and talk to the old world. You'll be like you know how like the Key and Peele. I don't know how much comedy sketches or sketch comedy you watch, but Key and Peele have the anger. So they have the anger translator from the Barack Obama days, and like he'd Obama would be have speak with cadence and have to be measured, and they have his like anger translator. You can be my old world translator, and you can like tell me why I should care about the old world and stuff like that. And you can come on and help us, translate old world to like maybe an AOS community. Like I love AOS. It is I played Warhammer Fantasy Battle. But like all my memories are intact from all that stuff, and they're fine. I have these memories. The new thing existing doesn't remove those from me.
mm,
But I didn't go through that trauma of them blowing up the thing I loved while I was still playing it, which I think
mm,
is something that we can be a little dismissive about in the AOS community. It's a lot easier for me personally to have come back to a new game than it would be for exactly me, exactly as I am now, to have been playing it through that. I probably would have gotten a little vindictive and angry too. It's different. Take more people. I'm guessing, looking at the fan base and how many people play Age of Sigmar right now compared to Warhammer Fantasy Battle, we have a lot more people playing Age of Sigmar that never touched a Warhammer Fantasy Battle game than ones that did. That would be my
I,
like hypothesis.
I have that feeling too. I think so. Yeah,
So
there's still yeah
so it's really
a lot of
easy to
people
be
like that still
yeah.
play it.
Yeah, yeah. It's a now you have people who kind of like you who stuck with the transition, like toughed it out. You've got friends. You've got people like me who like happened to miss the end time, and we didn't have to live through the trauma. And you've got like you've got all the shades in between. It's I think that as an Age of Sigmar, the Age of Sigmar community, in my vein, in my quest to be more excellent to people and help people be more excellent to themselves and each other, like it's easy to forget, especially if you're a newer player who never played Warhammer Fantasy Battle. You didn't have to like think about that to just kind of like be smug about the old world and be like, "Your thing blew up, and now I have my thing that I love." It's easy to kind of like not recognize that like it could have been really like think about like your favorite thing, and if you're currently playing it and they say your favorite thing is done, it's gone, and then like how does that make you feel? And now there's a new thing, and someone comes up to you and says, "Here's the new thing." Like you're probably gonna feel some like sort of like you're gonna recoil from that a little bit. Just you got your skepticism disarmed by a mini, but not everybody had that, right? Like not everyone
Right.
had that moment to sort of zen out and like okay, like we're good again. Not everybody had that ability or compartmentalization skills where you can go, okay, that was this, and I can compartmentalize this, and and now we can move on. And I just it's something I think about from time to time because the Age of Sigmar community to me is kind of the best gaming community I've ever been a part of, and I often think about like, well, how did we get here? And I think an essential part of that was the old world blowing up, because the people who make it through that got galvanized in a way in their passion, their love of the game. Like you had to endure your thing that you liked blowing up, then you had to endure the dark ages of no rules, sorry, no points, and then you finally get like a proper game, sort of like after that first GHB, and then certainly into second edition. You know the
Mm,
the type of player that forms the base of this community that it has had that trajectory, I think is part of what makes, and that's giving you credit, is part of what makes Age of Sigmar such a great community, because that sort of grassroots, that strong foundation, is what we build up from. Like that's,
Yeah.
The other, you look at some other communities and like some of the problems that they have to deal with, and I don't think they ever got that like sort of strong galvanized foundation, the way that AOS does. I feel like the AOS community can kind of take on a lot of stuff, and we're just excited to get people to come play our game and be like, hey, if you're cool, come play. Like, and I think that's really, I think that's special. I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Long-winded way of saying that. So
Certainly, yeah. In the early days, like when we're playing like MoComp for points and stuff, everything was community. Just coming out of the community, coming out of like South Coast GT, Facehammer types and Healing Hammer and stuff. It was all coming from there, and so like, oh, this could work. And then GT came out and it's like, oh, it starts here. It starts here. I think for many people.
Yeah, and then we have like the 2.0 babies, or like you have this sort of like community surges, and we kind of double our player base with 2.0. That's where like that really big surge happens. We can look at we can't really tell like raw numbers, because Games Workshop has those. We'll never have those numbers. Whatever, that's fine.
Yeah.
But we can look at profits and go, this is where it like more than double the amount of money going in here. Like, so like this is where that growth period happens. We can look at that and go, I'm gonna make an educated guess that that's about the time that we double in size, and we've been like keeping this like path kind of sense. Cities of Sigmar probably did actually bring back a bunch of people who were old Warhammer players, probably pretty specifically, like I'd imagine, just a hypothesis.
Yes, certainly. It's in sort of infused quite a few people who are kind of AOS curious. And it's like, I've got all these old minis. There's nothing here that I can do with them. And then suddenly it's like, there's a big tent. And you can just shove everything into.
And then once you're in, like, then you're in. Like that's how it works. Like, my city's armies is pretty cool, but what if I buy like a couple, like some Stormcast or Sylvaneth, like to play it? Like you think about like the business strategy that is Cities of Sigmar, and it's kind of brilliant. Like, it's just as yet another sort of gateway in from another sort of demographic of the fan base that they're just trying to like grow. Again, it's about growth, right? Like that's sort of like the main name of the game when you have these companies that operate at that level of profit. They almost don't even look at the amount of money they make anymore. They just look at the growth.
Potential markets or potential
ways. Market share. So just looking at market shares and markets and market growth and stuff like that. So I've read a book or two on it. No, the kind of resetting to the AOS and a little bit earlier point about like Soulbound filling in the world of AOS. I mean, you're dead on there too. The beauty of AOS is it doesn't feel like it has that hard frame around it the way that the old world did. Like there's only so much you can do. In a quite literal sense, AOS can do anything. There's the realms, they say, each realm is infinite, and which is, in those hype video days, it was, oh yeah, infinite is cool. But then you like get here to just like an infinite blank white canvas, and you're looking around and you're like, oh, okay.
A scene in the Matrix sort of thing. Where it's it's like
yep. No, exactly.
And then you upload stuff into it to actually make it into anything else.
Right. No, exactly. And it's important. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, that was it. Yeah, but initially it was just like, it was just so amorphous. It was just again, there was no points and there was no structure to the world itself. It's just like, I need something to latch onto, just as a sort of a primate. I need something, this little lizard brain of mine to sort of latch onto to sort of make it real. Yeah. And the old world obviously was just our world gone off weird ways, which is very familiar and very easy to sort of get into.
Yeah.
Even though they didn't actually explore that much of the old world beyond like Europe and a bit of Lustria, basically Europe, the old world itself, and the new world. Like, they didn't really go off to the east much, apart from the ogres and hobgoblins and whatnot.
Yeah.
Cathay didn't touch. They'll be touching it when the new edition comes out.
Yeah, they
So
reference it.
and that the old world was smaller than any of the realms,
Mm-hmm.
but at least you could latch onto it. Initially, before second edition came out, and they described them as planes with the chaotic bits at the end that you can't
Yeah,
go out
when
to.
we finally got the map, that was really
Yeah,
like a huge
I
one.
think humans need parameters to like find your own place.
Mm-hmm.
If there are no parameters, whether you'll ever reach them or not, you just feel a bit lost. It's like being in the deep ocean, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just like, I want to go to land, but I don't know where the land is.
Mm-hmm.
So having that sort of the maps really, right? The maps really was a game changer. And now Soulbound, it's not just a blank ocean. There's these places here, there's these places here, these
Oh,
places here. There's these
adding like
people.
outposts and stuff that like are like a literal thing, or even just like a descriptor like devil's spine, like wasteland, or just adding in these names. Like my brain then goes like, why is it called that? Something really cool must have happened. That's those parameters where you got to give people something, right? I mean, like I
Mm-hmm.
said, my personality is like you'll give me like a box and I'm gonna like punch out of it, and but like if there's no box to punch out of, then even I feel a little betrayed. I'm like, what's the point if I can't punch out of this box, but
There's no break. I
yeah,
need a break.
yeah, there's nothing to break here. Like this is no fun. Like, yeah, no, I think that rubs for rule. I think it rubs that way for rules. I think it rubs that way for narrative. I think, especially with Age of Sigmar, like sometimes we do get caught up. We were talking about that tip of the iceberg analogy earlier on, that brilliant analogy you came up with. We're talking about tournaments a lot, and I think that we sometimes think of Age of Sigmar players, especially on that tournament side, as not caring about the lore or not caring about the minis as much. They're just here to play games. They're just here to win, and so on and so forth. I'm like, yeah, but there's a reason they're in Age of Sigmar instead of 40k or instead of Magic the Gathering. There's a lot of competitive. There is not a lack of competitive nerd games out there, and there's probably a lot more like soft nerd fields out there if the objective is to win at nerd stuff, right?
Mm.
Than Age of Sigmar. So like I don't quite hold to the idea that like an Age of Sigmar gamer, even a whack tournament player, is here just to win and they don't care about anything else. I think that you gravitate towards stuff because you see some form of yourself or some identity thing, or maybe it's because your friends play it and that's where you're. That's a worthy reason as anything else. But I think that like Age of Sigmar as having a strong or focused identity on something is very important. I
Mm.
talk about it in the design of books all the time, or the models. Like I look at the Virkos and I go like like these aren't just like vampire dictionary definition of vampire, and it's just like the no these are Games Workshop's fucking vampires. Like these are Mortal Realms vampires, and my imagination is stirred. Like then I start to think about all the other. Well, if it looks like that, well, what if they're so like they're from Ulfenkarn, but what if they were on Akshi instead? And you start to like really run wild with it, and
Mm-hmm.
that's that identity that I mean that's very important. Like just giving people something like you said, latch onto. And
Yeah, it's like you see in lots of RPG books as well. You have plot seeds and stuff, idea seeds.
mm-hmm,
Well, you need these little things just so you're not just floundering around. It
mm-hmm,
just. I'm a biochemist. When I studied at university, was biochemistry, and like to start a reaction off, you just need a couple of things to sort of like join together, and then other stuff will catalysts work that way. They just
mm-hmm,
provide a place for the reaction to happen,
mm-hmm.
and what these give you is a place for the reaction for your imagination to happen and work, and it just makes the whole process
Yeah,
faster. Without it, it'll happen, but it'll be a slow sort of coming together of ideas rather than something that goes, you could do this, you can do this, and it just happens.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
so yeah, catalyst for ideas is what you need the background to be, and so then you can go that way with your hobby, you can go that way with your narrative, you can go that way with your gaming, you can go that way with your campaigns. So yeah,
Yeah. No, that's a great way to
it's good.
think. Yeah, good time. Yeah, yeah, and I promised I'd mention it. So I'm gonna go back to it where I talked. I caught myself getting caught in the in the taking for granted a story that was told already. So like Witcher 2 just came out with its new season, and I've never played the games. I have the first and second one. I've tried to play the first one like 3 or 4 times. Like I said, like the controls are so like archaic and antiquated. It's like it is a chore to actually play. So it is not
All right.
fun, and games should be
My
fun.
brother's a big fan of the game, but I've
I
not played it. But anyway.
I'm a huge fan of the book series. Like I read like
He likes books as well, yeah. But in the game, he's a
yeah,
consummate game.
like
But
if
I've not tried.
yeah, the books are like if so like I have a like I'm a huge fan for like I love short stories. I like writing short stories. I like consuming short stories. To me, like quintessential like I love like the anthology style of fiction where it's like collection of short stories from like someone you really like and maybe there's a couple poems written in there. And so like the original like I read I yeah, huge background of like gigantic fantasy nerds, and my uncle was like the OG sci-fi Trekkie nerd who like had VHS trading clubs and like just like when I talk about like the old guard of nerd, like he's the old guard. He was like there at the ground when nerd started. Like that was him. That was my uncle. And so like I always got like exposed to like these like really kind of cool stuff like growing up. And part of how I got exposed to nerdery is like some of it was from my uncle, some of it was from my peers who, and usually my friend Sam and his older brother were like just pivotal in my nerd indoctrination, and in the like early 2000s, like sort of late 90s, the Witcher books had like fan translations with like basically little better than like newspaper print, like just cheap crappy. Probably some university student printed 1,000 copies of them. They ended up at like a half price books or used bookstore or my friend's older brother was in like nerd swap meeting because that's what you do. You have like conventions, you just like swap nerd shit around and you pass it around like it's contraband. And so like I read the Witcher Young, younger, and then I ended up finishing it about the time I was working at Barnes and Noble, and I think that's about the time it actually got like an American. They started actually publishing them in English. Was in the like the 2010s, 20 teens, I think is when they started getting published. So the point is, I read like I finished these over like a decade ago, and I was first introduced to them like 20 years ago, um, and I've never played the games, which is how most people know it right now, and I've
Yeah.
only watched like 5 episodes of the series so far. And by the way, the series looks great. Like it's so far so good. Like thumbs up for me what I've seen so far. I haven't stopped watching it because I don't like it. I've stopped watching it because I get distracted easily, and I forget to finish things. And I was having a conversation with people who were having a conversation about Witcher, and in my mind, Witcher is the completed book series, right? And I took for granted that their interpretation of The Witcher is like the video games and the TV show. Now, it wasn't like it wasn't one of these like vitriolic fights you see on like Twitter between like, whatever various fandoms, but it was just like I utterly just in my brain had solved for that equation. It's just like, oh, I've read this, I've gone through the journey. It's like in fact, Ciri is an adult in my mind because I'd already read the whole stories and like I'd finished the stories, and no spoilers here but Ciri grows up, everybody. So like she's already like oh, she's like growing up, and so in my mind like she's growing, and people are like talking about this. I'm like, and they're talking about like all the like the cool characters in the story. I'm like, oh, Ciri's like an awesome character, and they're like, she's a kid, and I'm like, for a part of it, and like I found myself, I was doing the old world Warhammer guy. I was the old Hammer guy. Where like this is how like these characters from the Warhammer are, and like and what's going on in Age of Sigmar is not, and I just like I'm like, oh my god, like we're all like we get these sort of like memories that lock in place of things, and they kind of like become sort of sacrosanct, or they become like unassailable, and if you're not paying attention, you don't even realize you've done it, and if you're not are particularly astute in social situations, you almost don't even recognize like the bias you're operating on is incongruent with the conversation even at hand. Like what, and like I didn't even think about it. Like I didn't think about oh, they're talking about the game. Like didn't even, and like I might as well have been like, oh no, carry on, carry on, citizens. I have nothing to say to you. I could have just, you know, it was so weird. It was such a jarring moment where I'm like, oh, like where I'm like I'm being the stuffy nerd now, and we all obviously we have it, and the important part is like recognizing when it happens and then like adjust, recalibrating for the future. But it was just,
Yeah.
I said I would come back to it, more on that later, right? And I had to mention about the when we were on the subject of like of Old Hammer, or the world that was, because I never finished the world that was. I for me it stays in this like unsolved kind of solved unsolved mystery type thing where I'm like I know where this goes, but like I didn't solve it,
Mm.
which is a lot different than when you complete the story or when you complete the journey or you complete the equation. And so like I got to stay open to Age of Sigmar, and I I think it's really awesome that you sort of like went through the whole thing, and you're still, not only did you go through that whole thing, but you also like expatriated to Japan, and you're bringing this love of Warhammer kind of in a totality, not hating on Age of Sigmar, which seems to be like the stereotype for
That's an easy way to go, I guess, but not one that appeals. And
yeah,
the idea, going back to the idea, the name of our group, JUGS, was Japan's United. I
yeah,
really have the feeling that I want to bring everything together. So I've got friends in the old Hana community, and I still play One Fantasy in some of the older editions. I've got friends in Age of Sigmar, and I play Age of Sigmar happily, and Warcry, and Underworlds, and all sorts. Uh, and to me, I just see this long, like a spectrum, a long line, long timeline,
mm-hmm.
and people in some of the other groups, they just see this little bit and this little bit, a little bit, and I just want to just. It's like these people really get on really well with these people. If only there was just something that could connect them
Mm-hmm.
and just bring them together. So just trying to do that.
Yeah,
That's major thoughts behind everything, and then
yeah, yeah. I think
so it's tricky.
no, I think it's awesome, man. It's really admirable. I mean, we've had a few conversations on Twitter and a little bit in Twitch the other day, and I've been kind of like perusing your content like off and on from afar for a little bit now, and it's just it's that sort of like uniting the clans, it bring tying the adjacencies together, or building those bridges between that stuff. Like that's the cross pollination, like all that stuff's going on. It's pretty great. So I just want to glad I got
Played
to talk to
40k.
you. Yeah, go ahead. What was that?
I play 40k as well, obviously, and I've played it since Rogue Trader
Mm.
days, first edition of it. And then, like, a decade ago, the Horus Heresy came out,
Mm-hmm.
and I played that too.
Mm-hmm.
I played that, and there's less. There's not the animosity you see between strict Warhammer Fantasy players and AOS players, between the groups, between the 40k players and 30k players.
They're
Horus
too
Heresy players.
busy. They're too busy being angry. Like Age of Sigmar players and 40k players are too busy like being mad at each other to have the infighting with 40k. I mean, it's obvious, right? No, I'm just like I'm being flippant. I have no idea.
There are certain people in 30k who are like get angry at stuff.
That's weird.
And same as in old fantasy, some of the old guard maybe, but
Yeah.
well, everyone I've met has been really nice. Mostly like really nice
Well, I
people.
think people you meet will tend to. I mean, this is the I made fun of social media a little bit earlier. I mean, this is the problem with like meeting people. Like when you engage people on a personal level, usually people are cool to each other. Like they don't.
Mm.
It's this sort of like scrubbed away anonymity, like zoomed out, like social media interaction. That's when I think when people. And then we make the mistake as individuals of like assuming that the internet is real, and it's not. It's just fucking not. Yes, chat gang, I'm a figment of your imagination. The show right now does not exist. But no, I think that there's some of that going on right now, and I think that's just a microcosm of society happening, playing out in
Mm-hmm.
games. Um, Yeah, no,
Because
go ahead, go
I
ahead.
think when the old world comes out, I think it will get to a place where 40k and 30k are now,
You think so?
where it's not. Yeah, I think that will be a changer.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
No, I
We'll
mean, I
see.
see. I don't think Age of Sigmar has the animosity towards Warhammer Fantasy Battle. I think there's a couple dismissive jokes
I think
there,
they
but like I don't think the animosity feels like it comes from old like from like the Ninth Age stuff. You know, people who are like, oh, like I fucking all I do, you know, that Ninth Age Kings of Hammer or whatever the heck the other like Warhammer not Warhammer game is. Like, it feels like it comes from there, directed towards Age of Sigmar, and Age of Sigmar mostly just doesn't even know they like. I am aware of it because I'm eternally curious and I have a talk show. But I don't think the average like AOS player like it's that Mad Men gif that you see every now and then, the Mad Men meme where like they're in where the character's in the elevator and goes, I don't even think of you. And I think that's the AOS player's perspective toward like the Warhammer Fantasy Battle person who's like vitriolic. So I wonder, and people who get into Warhammer via like Total Warhammer or like Dawn of War, I don't think there's any animosity whatsoever because they're just like fucking excited about the game, and then they find out there's a tabletop game, and they're like, "Fuck yeah, let's go!" So it's I'd be interested to see if the old hammer does come out, or if the old world. Sorry, I keep calling old hammer. That feels derogatory. If the old world does come out, if Age of Sigmar is going to feel like the middle child, where they're like, "You've forgotten us," and then some animosity is going to come out of the Age of Sigmar community. Because right now they're the baby. You've got you've got like the older brother, or you got Big Bro or Big Sis, which is 40k, and I don't even really register 30k as a different game. It's just like that's the space one. Um, and that's the one with the Mahrines, and sometimes I guess you play your Primarchs. I don't know. um, that's my ignorance though. Like, no, I'd be interested to see though, because Age of Sigmar is clearly like the new baby, and Games Workshop's putting a lot of effort and a lot of resources into them. By the way, while I'm on this, I recently had it pointed out to me the number of armies that have actually released for 40k as well, and it's something like 6 or 7 in the last 6 or 7 years. Also,
expanded. Yeah.
yeah, and like this narrative I was seeing on Twitter with some of the what I would call grognards, some 40k grognards or chuds on were like, oh, the Games Workshop doesn't care about 40k anymore, and they only care about like Space Marines, and then like that isn't the truth. Like I'm like, okay, yeah, all I ever see is like a different like Space Marine released on the model thing, so like in the back of my head I'm like, yeah, they're always releasing Marines, they're always releasing Marines. And then I'm like, oh no, let's like literally check the tapes, and they've released like 6 new armies in the last like 7 years, and had like 2 major hobby line revamps in Sisters of Battle and Orcs now. Like
Orcs now, and Screens themselves, obviously with 8th edition.
Necron's three huge army revamps, right? Like that's actually a really good pace. Like where did this narrative come from that 40k isn't getting new armies? Like that's just patently not true.
Yeah, most of the ones, I suppose they could say, because lots of them are Imperial, so it's like you got your knights and stuff, and you got the
knights and
stuff, and Adeptus Mechanicus came up, but they're all new effectively in terms of having an army you can play with. So
yeah, but that's like complaining that like Order keeps getting new armies. Like we get it, like Order's gonna keep getting new armies. Like as a Death player, I've been spoiled these last couple years because I got like one new army and like half of it like a model range revamp, and I'm like, I'm good, like I'm no complaints here, but there are certainly like model ranges out there that need something, but like I mean that's I don't know, like it's weird, like obviously they can't release 6 armies a year, and that's just impractical. And I don't know, it's weird, like because Age of Sigmar's had a really good clip, obviously, of releasing new armies. Obviously, it's a new game,
yeah.
But even 40k they've been keeping on top of. And as someone who just doesn't play 40k, I just kind of like whatever random narratives I see become dominant on Twitter without looking into it. I just go, oh yeah, that must be true, because like 16 people in my Twitter feed just said that and agree with each other, and I'm like, and then I actually had someone say, no, this is how many armies came out, list them all, and then I'm like, I look at it and I like, do a real quick independent research Google search type thing, and I'm like, oh shit, no, they've gotten like a new army every year. Who cares? Like, that old narrative is just wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And
Go
go ahead.
It's just stuff that gets stuck in some people's psyche.
Yeah.
Like, and the blinders come down, and the words they've learned come out without thinking. It's going straight to the spine, straight from the spine, straight to the mouth, not going for the brain.
Yeah.
So, that's just that, really.
Yeah. No.
It's come a bit.
Go ahead.
That's right, really.
Yeah. No. And so I just kind of going back to this old world. I'd be interested to see if the Age of Sigmar community acts like becomes the middle child, where they're like, they get that like secret resentment in two direction, that they don't really, it comes out in microaggressions and passive aggressively, but they're not, middle child syndrome, right? Playing on that. I don't know if it's a real thing. It's just, the meme of what that must be. Or if it will be closer to like the 30K, 40K thing, where like finally the sort of like vitriol is staved from the old Hammer players, the people who want the Warhammer the old world. If they'll finally, like, they'll get their thing and they'll be like, yo, all right, we're chill now, like it's cool, and it really will just be like 30K and 40K with fantasy stuff. That's my ideal scenario. Like, I want people to have the things they love. A little bit of the only time you look in your neighbor's bowl is to see if they have enough type thing. Like, I'm happy with what's in my bowl, and I don't need to look in yours and compare. Like, so I hope that everyone gets what they want. It's just that'd be cool. Games Workshop is a huge company. I think one of the main reasons they're doing Warhammer: The Old World is because they have enough of a knowledge of the demographic that they can launch a whole new line and scoop up some extra players. Quite frankly, right? Like they've looked at
the net out there to get more players in.
Yep. Because
it's not something that's gone away. That the sort of clinging to the old world after maybe many people felt the same as I did. It's like, really, I wasn't finished with this.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've continued in these sort of groups, and these groups have not faded away or shrunk or anything.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned the Ninth Age earlier, my impression of it, there's some people who are very, very, very hardcore into it, but the initial kind of surge into that has kind of petered away, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel that there's as many Ninth Age players around as there were. Not that there were that many.
As soon as Cities of Sigmar came out, they all came and played Age of Sigmar. Like, it really, they just, a bunch of them just stopped playing Ninth Age and came and like finally like rebased their models, because that's really what they were mad about. They just didn't want to rebase their models. As far as I can tell. Don't get me wrong. I've had to rebase some stuff too. I get it, but like, it really was like, fine. Like, they had to have enough carrot to be like, fine, I'll fucking rebase. Like, that's what happened, as far as I can tell. But it's like, now it's like the people who still want like Warhammer: The Old World to come out. It's like just the fucking Bretonnian players. Like, they're just like, please. Like, I just want to play fucking new Bretonnians, and then like every time like a new Age of Sigmar army comes out, they're like, it's not a fucking cavalry army. I just want sweet dudes in armor on fucking horses. And then like Games Workshop, all right, so we're gonna release horses, but they have weird hats, and they just want knights in armor on horses, okay? Like, throw the Bretonnian players a bone, I guess.
It'll come then. It'll come.
Yeah, they'll come around. No, it's fine. I mean, that's the thing though. Is Games Workshop does release like genuinely great models, and you want to see like, I mean, that sort of like enemy of potential of like what might be that the horrors of expectation, right? And people have expectations, so
Yeah.
it's human. So hopefully everyone gets what they want. Again, I love what you're doing in I love what you're doing over there in Japan. This grassroots, building a community, keeping the passion alive through some real adversity, and really kind of trying to unite the clans, of all these passion projects. I think that's really radical, man. So,
Unless
any final thoughts? Any last digital soapbox moments?
I don't think so. I think we're good.
I think we're good. All right, you need to shamelessly promote all your stuff and tell everyone how to find you on the internet and where to find your content because if people need to pay attention to your content, it's actually really great. And you do something that so few content creators do, which is you're consistent. And so consistent stream of like hobby and narrative coming out from your content. Where can people find you?
Okay, you can find us on YouTube, which is JUGS, Japan's United Gaming Society. Um, if you search for maybe the Master Tavern Keeper, which is this, that will probably come up on Leeds.
Yeah.
The Master Tavern's History of the Old World. That's our podcast on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Podbean. That's out every week, every weekend. If you look for bizarrely Advanced Hero Quest on YouTube and search for battle reps there, Jugs will probably come up that way because it's got quite a lot of views. Those bat reps they're ongoing.
Yeah, bat reps are huge.
Yeah, and if you're in Japan, then reach out to us. You can find us on Twitter. Look for Jugs. That'll be I think that's at Damimix, which is DEIMIMIX.
All right, right on. And I'll have
Yeah.
the links in the down there part in the show notes for everybody to check out watching this back on the VODs or listening on Spotify and all that stuff. And then like you mentioned like the Facebook communities for actually like sort of broader Japanese gaming groups. What were those again,
Yes.
real quick? You want to reset
Oh,
those?
so we have our own Facebook page, which is also Jugs at Chiba Wargamer. But the main one, I'd say the main one in Japan, if you're coming over from Japan as an expat or coming over here to study or work here for a couple of years, you should definitely go to the Tabletop Gamers of Japan site. It's got about 800 members in, and that's where you will link up with fellow gamers, be able to get games in, reach out, see who's nearby, what's playing what. Out of the local base in just west of Tokyo, they have regular gaming now again. A to Z Gaming, that's called.
Okay.
If you're in Kansai, Osaka way, check out the Rising Sun website. And AOS Gamers in Japan has a website as well, which is they're associated with the Rising Sun tournament.
Right.
So, and over in Kyushu, they have Kita Q Gamers, which is a Kita Kita with a Q.
Yeah.
And they've been going for years and years and years and years and years, and they're a really good group of people up in Fukuoka, I think, up in northern Kyushu. So they're like the three main areas. And then there's who else have we got? Oh, if you are interested in the world that was old Hammer stuff, the stuff I do, there's also the Crown of Command podcast, who really focuses on old Hammer stuff. If you really want to relive your youth, it's a great little group of people to follow, I think.
Yeah, there you go. Awesome. Thank you so much for that. All right. I mean, thanks for coming on. Thanks for doing the show. This is a long overdue, and don't be a stranger. Chat gang, thank you so much for joining us tonight. You are the show within the show. The reason I do this thing. Remember to drink your milk, pay your taxes, and I'll see you tomorrow because we're doubling up on episodes this week because I have my sense of self-preservation is way out of whack. Good night, everybody. Good night, Damian.